And you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christy's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christy's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 8th of March. Today, the counter-extremism czar claims that London is turning into a no-go zone for Jews amid large pro-Palestine demonstrations. We'll join Katherine Fer in just a moment. Meanwhile, there's a damning new opinion poll revealing a large number of people don't trust either the Tories or Labour to handle the economy.
Republican president tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
President Biden takes a swipe there at Donald Trump during his State of the Union speech, and he addressed the attacks on his age.
I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while.
Protesters are set to demonstrate against the government's decision to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton, and that's 1 year on since the plans were actually revealed.
People are really worried and they feel like they haven't got a voice because the Home Office keeps saying we're engaging with the locals, but they're not.
While Meghan allegedly is preparing to relaunch her image in the UK, with reports suggesting the Duchess of Sussex is looking to hire British PR gurus. But can she ever win back the hearts of the nation?
Good morning. It was a dramatic night for British clubs in Europe. Liverpool, West Ham, Aston Villa, Brighton and Rangers were all in action as the latest on the Christian Horner F1 controversy. And in the cricket, India have the upper hand over England on day one of the 5th Test.
Good morning. There's plenty of dry and bright weather around for many of us today, but there is some rain due tonight. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Hello again, I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Well, I'm all on my Todd at the moment because Ellie is going to be joining me in a few moments' time. She'll be in a bit later, but there's lots to talk about. I've been away, as you might suspect, for about 3 weeks now. It was going to be the holiday of a lifetime, Hawaii. It turned out to be very, very cold, wet, miserable, and it was just one of those things that you have to put down to experience. It should have been the holiday of a lifetime, and it wasn't. And I just wondered if you could cheer me up, please, by telling me any stories you might have of holidays from hell. It wasn't a holiday from hell. It's talk about a first world problem when you're sort of moaning about your holiday, you're stuck on a luxury cruise ship. But it wasn't what I'd planned. I know once I went to Venice and everybody said to me, you'll love Venice. Venice is the most splendid, wonderful place in the world. And I was really looking forward to being knocked out by it. But again, the weather was so appalling. It rained and rained and rained. And it was cold and wet and windy. And I don't ever want to go to Venice again in my life. And people can't understand that. But sometimes it all goes wrong. So would you please cheer me up with your stories of maybe a holiday that didn't really work out? I'd love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.com. Cheer me up. Do. Lots to talk about. Happy International Women's Day. Does it make any difference to how you feel about things? I wonder. Anyway, we'll talk more about that a bit later on too. Now, it was all going on overnight because last night American President Joe Biden took aim at his Republican rival Donald Trump during his State of the Union address to Congress.
Former Republican president tells Putin, quote, do whatever the hell you want. That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous. It's dangerous and it's unacceptable.
He was on fighting form, and he also, of course, faced accusations of being too old. So he hit back at his critics.
I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserve to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic.
Well, it happened while we were all asleep, and I only caught a little moment of it this morning as I was getting up. But he did seem to me to be on extremely good form. Let's see what the US thinks of it. We'll talk to US's political analyst, Eric Ham. Good morning, Eric. What did you think? I thought he was on very, very good fighting form.
Well, I thought Joe Biden was fiery. He was energetic. He was engaging. He was all of the things that I think he needed to be. But more importantly, we know that there have been an enormous amount of criticism over Joe Biden's level of fitness to serve as president of the United States. What we saw tonight, I think, helped erase a lot of those concerns. The question going forward is, are we going to see this Joe Biden over the next 8 months through November?
And will it be enough, even if he is on good form, and he was full of humour, even about things like his age, which is clearly a bit of a problem, would it ever be enough to beat Trump at the moment, who is doing very, very well in the polls?
I think if we see that Joe Biden over the next 8 months, I think it'll be a fairly easy contest to defeat Donald Trump. I think what we saw tonight was someone who spoke about America in glowing terms, spoke about America in terms of where America is headed, not where America is coming from. And he gave a vision for the nation, but he also spoke about the enormous amount of achievements that his administration has accomplished. But also what he did was he spoke directly to his critics. He leaned into the issue of age. He leaned into the issue of the Israel-Hamas conflict and those who don't support his policy. He also leaned into the issue of immigration and also many of those Republicans who don't want to see him as commander-in-chief. And so I think we saw a president tonight who spoke to his base, who spoke to the American electorate, who's very wary, but also spoke to the opposition. And I think he did it in a way that was refreshing, that was creative, and in many ways it was funny and reassuring.
Yeah, yes, and it ended not so long ago. Has there been very much time yet to sort of gauge what the people think in America at the moment? Were they impressed?
Well, many people, particularly if you speak to the base, they were saying this is a good start. A good start to see the president in this type of form. There, of course, are those on the right who believe that he was yelling at Republicans, who felt his speech was too political. In fact, I do believe that this State of the Union was comparable to the State of the Union that we saw from Donald Trump during his last year in office when he delivered his final State of the Union. It was a very political speech, no doubt about it. I mean, he went after his political opponents. He went after Donald Trump, by name. He went after the Supreme Court that was sitting right there. This is something that we had never seen from President Joe Biden. And I think what we saw was a president who was clearly on a political and campaign footing.
And what of his stance when it comes to Gaza and the Israeli president? I mean, what do you think he was saying in that he announced, and it's had time to make the front pages of some of the newspapers today, the US is going to build a port on the shore of Gaza to allow aid deliveries. How will that go down in Israel?
Well, I think what we're seeing between the United States and Israel, certainly they are not on the same footing. They are at odds. And we know that the United States is Israel's biggest ally in the region. But what we are seeing here is an administration in the United States and in Israel that simply are at loggerheads, particularly over this two-state solution. President Biden actually called for that tonight in his speech. We knew that he would. In fact, we saw that being telegraphed earlier this week from the Vice President Kamala Harris. But also, I think what we're seeing here is what we heard was a president who was also imploring Congress to pass that multi-billion-dollar aid package that includes resources for Israel as well as Ukraine.
Very interesting times. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's 9 minutes past 6. You're watching GB News. Now to our top story, actually. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations are apparently turning London into a no-go zone for Jews. That's according to the counter-extremism czar. Robin Simcox said that whilst the government had the necessary powers, it had failed to act on groups that came just below the extremism threshold. Meanwhile, march organisers have claimed their events are peaceful and said the slogans used during demonstrations are not anti-Semitic. However, if you look at the front page there of the Telegraph, the front page lead there, London is now a no-go zone for Jews. Well, let's get a bit more on this from our political correspondent, Katherine Fer, who joins us from Westminster. Hello there, Katherine. This is going to be a very, very big problem indeed for actually any potential government in the next general election, isn't it? What they're going to do about this now that this extremism advisor has been so blunt?
Yes, indeed, and good morning, Anne. And particularly while this horrific war is continuing in Gaza, and there is another big pro-Palestine march happening in central London tomorrow, and Michael Gove is going to unveil the government's new definition of extremism next week, because what this independent advisor is saying basically is that they haven't been tough enough on groups that are not terrorist groups but are still extremist. And he's saying to the government, don't be afraid to take legal action if necessary to clamp down on these groups, to withdraw funding threatening to ban them from speaking at universities, etc. It's also understood that he would be supportive of the police, and bear in mind it is a decision for the police, taking slightly different action with some of these marches, perhaps saying that going forward after tomorrow, pro-Palestine marches should not take place in central London, but rather in a different part of the city, or perhaps they should be static protests, because of course what we see week after week after week in the capital is these huge marches, hundreds of thousands of people in central London. And Jewish people, we know there's been rocket in the number of anti-Semitic attacks and incidents since October the 7th, and many Jewish people simply feeling that they can no longer go into central London, which is a very sad reflection on where we are now. Of course, following the election of George Galloway in Rochdale last week, we had the quite extraordinary sight of the Prime Minister coming out and making a speech outside Downing Street and saying not to, quote, let the extremists hijack your marches, also stressing to the police that we will back you when you take action. The police trying to tread quite a difficult line, I think, but many people were absolutely outraged to see the from the river to the sea, a phrase which is considered by many to be anti-Semitic, to be beamed on to Big Ben in the last few weeks. So tensions running very high, difficult for the police, and people have been feeling that the police are not coming down hard enough on some of the banners, the slogans, the chanting in these marches. So Mark Rowley, in response, would say that we have to police the law as it is, not as others would wish it to be.
And it's a very, very uncomfortable issue, isn't it, while politicians are trying to fight an upcoming general election. Can I take you to the GB News' People's Poll today, which shows that only 47% of 2019 Conservative voters are planning to vote Conservative next time?
Yes, and I think that's the most worrying statistic here of many worrying figures in our People's Poll today for the government. That's pretty much half of the people who gave their vote to the Conservatives in 2019, led Boris Johnson to get that 80-seat majority, are saying that they would not vote for them again. And support for the parties, Labour 46%, Conservatives way back on 18%, Reform on 13%, Lib Dems on just 10%. And if we can take a look at who they trust to lower taxes, I'm laughing because we know that there's very little money around. The tax burden, despite those national insurance cuts, is still rising. The Conservatives with Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, just 15%, not much better for Labour with Rachel Reeves at 17%. But none of the above, the outright winner on 44%. And I think it speaks, doesn't it, to really the level of disengagement with politicians. Voters are not stupid. They know that things have got much tougher over the last few years. They know that they've been given a tax cut in national insurance, but also that the tax burden is still rising. Public services are not in a good state, so we're paying more than ever, and many people feel getting less and less in return. So these are really worrying figures. And worth saying too, this poll was taken yesterday, so after that budget, if the government thought that was going to change the weather, it doesn't seem like it's happening. And 1,700 people polled. And in terms of the cost of living crisis, 24% think we're over the worst of it. 42%, unfortunately, feel that the worst is still to come. So very, very bad news for Rishi Sunak this morning with those numbers.
And finally, when's the next general election going to be held? What do our people say?
Well, they are, most of them, 37%, the biggest number, said they would like it to be as soon as possible. 11% for May, 16% for the autumn, and 5% for January. I'm not quite sure who would want to go to the polls in January. My personal view is that it will be the autumn. But nevertheless, Rishi Sunak hasn't quite shut down persistent rumours that it could be May. We will know by March the 26th. That would be the latest they could announce a general election if they wanted to go to the polls the same day as the local elections. But with the polls as they are, why would they want to do that? I'm not convinced.
No, absolutely. Oh dear, it's months more of agony. Katherine, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. It's 17 minutes past 6. Now, would you believe it's been a year since plans to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton were leaked to the press as the Home Office tried to reduce reliance on expensive hotels. And since then, West Lindsey District Council and community groups have fought to prevent progress at the historic site, which they say puts a £300 million regeneration at risk. And now, despite the High Court ruling that government plans are lawful, the people of Scampton are once again preparing to fight. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story for you.
Save our Scampton! Save our Scampton!
For a year now, the future of Britain's most iconic airbase has been in doubt. A £300 million regeneration deal at risk. Sarah Carter is from the Save Our Scampton campaign.
People are really worried and they feel like they haven't got a voice because the Home Office keeps saying we're engaging with the locals, but they're not.
1 year ago, media reports began to circulate that thousands of asylum seekers would be coming to Scampton. This led Gainsborough MP Sir Edward Lee to raise the issue in Parliament.
West Lindsey District Council has not still been informed officially that the Home Office is planning to place migrants in RAF Scampton.
Months of protests and a spate of police incidents punctuated a difficult year for the tiny community. 2023 ended with the council losing a judicial review, the High Court ruling Home Office plans are lawful. Few airbases hold the prestige of Scampton. The men of 617 Squadron flew the daring dambuster raids from its runway during the Second World War.
They are sure to be remembered in all histories of the war.
Now West Lindsey is preparing a new legal challenge as the Home Office pushes to secure the site for 3 more years.
There's porter cabins that have just been stuck there for months on end.
Councillor Roger Patterson represents Scampton at West Lindsey.
Unless there's a compromise or unless they back down, we have no future. So it's complete and utter despair.
A Home Office spokesperson said, "We understand the concerns of local communities and are liaising with councils and local services to manage the impact of using these sites on a temporary basis." A year on, and the Home Office vision for Scampton is in limbo. The persistent council here in West Lindsey is hoping planning law can prevent any further progress. Meanwhile, a defiant community says they'll continue to protest even if legal challenges fail. Not a single asylum seeker has moved into Scampton.
I don't believe they'll ever get here. We're trying damn hard to make sure it doesn't happen.
The community is dug in deep. Will Hollis, GB News in Scampton.
Scampton being a limbo. Is that how you see it? Well, let's ask human rights lawyer SCH Khan, who joins me now. A very good morning to you. It seems that anything the government tries to do ends up being in limbo. How do you see things ending up?
Hi, good morning. Yes, I mean, I think that's the problem here, isn't it? And already we've seen, obviously, like you said, it's been a year since the plans were leaked. There's already been a judicial review. More legal action is being contemplated. I mean, on both sides, really, either sides from the government, in terms of public consultations, the legal action, the planning there. It's just hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds of taxpayer money being spent. And like we just said, not a single asylum seeker has been sent there. I mean, it's obviously probably, comparable to, for instance, the Rwanda scheme, so many other schemes where the government comes up with these ideas, then spends years fighting them through courts, and very few of them actually materialize. So that's it. It is a complete waste of money. Going through things without actually having any legal recourse, without having the legal grounds in place beforehand to ensure people that what they're doing is lawful.
But something's got to happen in the end, hasn't it? I mean, I don't know what it's like for you at the moment being described as a human rights lawyer, because some people will see you as the problem. Every time the government tries to put asylum seekers anywhere, it seems that their human rights trump the human rights of people who object.
Well, it depends what you mean by obviously it depends where they're being put. The point is, if by being put we mean they're being put in Rwanda, then of course, yes. I think anyone who understands the implications of that, understands the situation, has ever met or spoken to an asylum seeker, understood their problems, their situation, why and how they're in the UK, would object to that. But even in terms of this, we're using these RAF bases. We previously used former army barracks, all kinds of situations. The point is, even if we do keep someone there for 6 months, a year, and so on, at some point we have to, let's just say, let them out, let them into the wider community. And that's when these problems happen, because they've been locked up for so long. They don't have access to the wider community, wider facilities. They've not been allowed to integrate within the society. And then the asylum seekers are the ones who get criticized for that. How are they supposed to learn English? How are they supposed to learn the British way of life if what we're doing is the first 6 months or a year or 2 years of their time in the UK, they're being locked up somewhere separately? They're the ones, the government, parts of the media, politicians blame asylum seekers for ghettos, segregation. They don't want to mingle. How on earth are they supposed to mingle? They're being locked up, or even if not locked up, but basically with almost no money, no proper transport links, being sent to these former army barracks or RAF bases. How on earth are they going to be allowed to mingle? They have their own doctors, their own facilities. They just don't share facilities with anyone. But in terms of a solution, or in terms of, the main point is, yes, just like we do with other population, other people are already here. Some of them, health problems, other problems, they have to be supported by the government or the taxpayer, through whether it's local government or national government, of course, for some people. But like the rest of us do, so many of us, the vast majority of us, we go out and we earn a living. Why are these people not allowed to do that? They are not allowed to work in the UK, so many of them. Of course, and I know I get criticized for saying things like this all the time, because then people say, well, all of them aren't, educated, all of them aren't qualified, but so many of them are. Mm-hmm. We've had refugees just in the past few years from Ukraine, Afghanistan. Sadly, it's probably going to be lots of Palestinians coming up. So many other countries. So obviously, in those countries, we do have doctors, we have engineers, we have people, doing all sorts of work, all sorts of qualifications they can bring over. So many of them should be allowed, would be able to take on proper work, actually pay taxes. And I think that's the biggest problem here.
It brings us back to that term limbo, doesn't it? It's limbo was never a good place for any human being to be. Shoaib, thanks you very much for joining me this morning. Thank you. And do let us know your views on that. How would you solve what seems to be a completely insoluble problem? gbviews@gbnews.com. At 25 minutes past 6, should we get the weather?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on, quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland, it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas, with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
And right now it's time for our latest Great British Giveaway. First of all, the winner was Phil from West Yorkshire. And now we have our latest winner, who's Charles from Stoke-on-Trent, who won £18,000 in cash. Here's the moment he found out that he'd won.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
Oh, flipping heck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Flipping heck. That's a big surprise. Flipping heck, fire. I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm glad it was just flipping heck, aren't you? Anyway, here's your chance to enter our latest Great British Giveaway and win £12,345 in cash and a whole host of treats.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Oh, good luck indeed. Thank you so much for getting in touch with your stories of holidays from hell. It's cheered me up hearing that you also have had, from time to time, holidays that didn't work out so well. Mine was to Hawaii, and I have never had such bad weather on a holiday in my life. In 3 weeks, 8 minutes of sunshine. That's all there was. Rough seas. It was really nasty. Craig says, I've been to Vegas 3 times and been dumped twice whilst on holiday there, so I'm not going back. And there's another lovely story from Dave in Luton. Hi, Dave. Says, we had a holiday in Italy a few years back. We hired a car and we went touring around. And my wife and I stopped at a motorway service station and we went to the cafe there. We were in the queue and these women behind started pushing us towards the front. We didn't understand what was happening until my wife realised that the rucksack on my back was open. Somebody had taken out our passports and the foreign currency, all gone. We had to get replacement passports, and luckily our bank cards were still in my wallet. Very, very careful. Yeah, you probably won't want to go back there either. So yeah, please keep any stories you've got to cheer me up of holidays that really didn't work out and maybe were more of an ordeal than a holiday. At exactly 6:30, we better get on. Still to come, we'll have the latest on Meghan Markle's plans to relaunch her image in the UK. That's next. You're watching Breakfast on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christy's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christy's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Ellie.
Yes,
nice to see you.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good to see you too.
You haven't heard my story. I'm not going to tell you too much. But my holiday was the holiday from hell.
No.
Because the weather was so appalling. No. I never want to go back to Hawaii in my life. Oh. Isn't that awful? And it just reminded me of the only time I've ever been to Venice, and people have said, oh, you'll love Venice, it's so wonderful.
No.
I've been to Venice once, and the weather was so appalling, I never want to go to Venice either.
Oh, you poor thing.
So, but apparently I'm not the only person, because I've been asking people, lovely people, for their holidays from hell stories, which is meant to cheer me up, and you are cheering me up. Just been given some breaking news, and obviously we will find out very much more in the next couple of moments.
Yes.
But Theresa May has just resigned. Now, what does that mean? She's stood down as an MP. She's standing down at the next election. That's what she's doing. Sorry, just finding out about it now. She is standing down at the next election. She will not be standing to be an MP.
Yes, we will
Maidenhead, her constituency, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. We'll get more for you on that in the next few moments. That breaking news in the past few minutes, that Theresa May will not be standing as an MP at the next general election.
Gosh. Well, the general election, whenever it happens, is going to be interesting, because there will hardly be a Conservative face that we know.
Well, yes, this is it. It's happening very regularly at the moment, isn't it? They all seem to be stepping down. We'll get more for that.
Meanwhile, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, is looking to sort of improve her image here in the UK, because apparently she's looking for a British PR guru to take on her image. And, of course, this comes, 4 years now after the Duke and Duchess of Sussex stepped back from royal duties.
But will Meghan be able to win the Brits over? Well, let's speak now to royal expert and journalist Pandora Forsyth. Very good morning to you, Pandora. So what's this all about? Meghan Markle planning to relaunch her image in the UK.
Yeah, morning, ladies. Happy International Women's Day. Yes. 2 female anchors. We love to see it. So this is the first time that Meghan will have a UK-based employee. Well, Meghan and Harry will have a UK-based employee since they left for sunny California, which is definitely going to cause headlines, as it already has done. Because what does this mean for them now? They've obviously tried to relaunch their brand, their website, and it obviously is going to lead to questions as to why now, why the business plan change. Well, apparently they're launching a very new exciting project, whatever that means. I can imagine people are saying it's similar to Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop lifestyle brand. But we know as well that Harry and Meghan are struggling with popularity in the UK, and that's just a fact. I mean, the polls do say that. As soon as I say that, I seem to have people saying, oh no, everyone loves them here. Well, that's just not the case, unfortunately, anymore, because people are confused by them because they don't know what they're doing from one day to the next. So it'll be interesting to see what this PR will be able to do for them in the UK.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who they get. But I mean, if I were a PR guru in Britain, I would say the first thing you've got to do is occasionally spend some time in Britain.
Yes, well, you would think so, wouldn't you? I think that would probably be the first basis here. But of course, you know, they don't want to be stepping on the Prince and Princess of Wales's shoes, seeing as they've taken up a lot of their work since they left, which I can totally understand. Then there's also everything we've discussed over the recent years to do with security, etc. And then they're just their view on the UK in general. They've been so open about how they think they were treated here by the royal family and how they wanted it to be a complete success, but unfortunately it wasn't. I mean, it was, you know, a few years ago to this day, 3 years ago, I think, to this day, but they had that Oprah interview, didn't they? And they sort of slammed Britain quite spectacularly in that interview, and they were honest about it. And you know, everyone's got freedom of speech, and that's exactly what they did. But people remember that, and the British are stubborn. We're known for being quite stubborn, so I'm not sure how this will help them. But you know, kudos to them for at least trying to win us back over.
It'll be interesting to see what happens next. Watch this space, as they say. Pandora Forsyth, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
An apology would help, wouldn't it? But they're never going to.
Well, maybe they think maybe least said, soonest mended.
I think William will want an apology.
I think he certainly will. And we are expecting to see Prince William today, aren't we?
Yes,
at the Oval.
Doing something at the Oval to do with the Earthshot Prize. So it'll be nice to see him out and about again as well.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see if he addresses anything about the Princess of Wales. Probably not, I would expect. But it would be good to see him at the very least.
OK, shall we catch up on the sport? Aidan is with us. Hi, Aidan.
Good morning to you both. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
What do we kick off with?
I would say let's look at the European football at the moment, because it's quite rare that the Europa League throws up stories in the Europa Conference League. The Champions League normally dominates everything, but we saw some excellent stories last night. 5 games in total involving British clubs. Aston Villa got a 0-0 draw in Ajax. Not particularly a great game, but let's look at the game in Rome, because 2 Brighton fans were stabbed yesterday.
Yes.
And they recovered to go to the game, which was fantastic news later in the evening. Unfortunately, when they got there, their team were absolutely hammered by 4 goals to 0. It was Brighton's first trip to Rome in their history. It's their first European jaunt. These are 2 legs, so there's another game to come in the home leg. I think it's next week. Possibly some of them might be the week after. But they've left themselves a hell of a lot to do with a 4-0 deficit. Glasgow Rangers as well. In Scotland, they went to Benfica, got a very creditable 2-2 draw. That gives them a fighting chance. Coming back to Ibrox, their manager says that the home territory will be, or the home occasion will be, a deciding factor possibly in the second leg. We saw Liverpool rattling 5 goals in a trip to Prague against Sparta. Jurgen Klopp saying afterwards that he was marvelling at some of the performances of his players, and it just continues their brilliant form. And I said a few weeks ago, didn't I was worried that Liverpool, with the fact that Jurgen Klopp has announced he's leaving, I thought we might see a drop-off in performance, because that's sometimes what happens, but we're not seeing that at all. They're going from strength to strength in the Premier League as well, doing very well. We've got a 3-horse race, very exciting. And West Ham, another VAR controversy. I mean, how many times do I sit here and...
It's boring, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And another one last night. 5 minutes it took for the referee and the VAR officials to decide yesterday that the Freiburg defender didn't, in fact, handle the ball for a penalty to West Ham. It was clear and obvious to everybody who could see it that the ball hit the player's hand and it wasn't given. But nonetheless, another leg next week in London, and West Ham will be hoping to turn that one round.
Right, we're just about to run out of time, but I've been out of the country and I haven't followed the Christian Horner story very well.
Oh, goodness me.
There's yet another thing happening.
Goodness me. Yeah, I mean, there's tentacles everywhere here. I mean, this is a story that's got everything. We haven't had much of an update since for the last 24 hours, but Christian Horner has said predictably, in fact, again, that it's time to draw a line under events.
Yeah.
We've also seen Red Bull have announced that the departure of the woman who made the complaint against Horner in the first place.
She's now gone.
She has. She's not been identified. Red Bull have not said why. The BBC are claiming that it's because of an act of dishonesty. And I said something last week that I think has come back to to prominence this week. Other sponsors are going to look at this now around the sport and say, this isn't good for the sport. And this is really interesting. Honda are the engine partner for Red Bull, clearly a massive global entity, and they're saying they want more details on this, not satisfied with how it's being handled. And I think that might be when the worm turns. And I might... Look, it's all very well. Any politician, any person in a senior position, it's all very well to say it's time to draw a line. We would all like to say that whenever we get in trouble, won't we? But I think that something might happen on this.
That needs to be exposed.
It doesn't help as well, and Ellie, that the sport is dull on the track at the moment. Verstappen, who's the Red Bull driver, winning last week at a canter. He's probably going to win this week as well in Saudi. And so, you know, it's a bigger story than it needs to be.
OK. Thanks so much, Aidan.
Right, yeah, we'll be back with you in just a couple of moments talking about International Women's Day and all the women who are apparently world leaders at the moment. That's coming up in our paper review, which is next.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Household energy bills will fall by £238 per year. Good news. An average of £20 a month. That's as Ofgem unveils its new energy price cap. So joining us in the studio is GB News economics and business editor Liam Halligan.
The Ofgem energy price cap, that's the regulated amount that energy suppliers are allowed to charge, will fall from £1,928 a year to £1,690. That's from April the 1st. That's a drop of about 12%. That should save the typical household 20 quid a month. Prices are cheaper than they were, but they're still very elevated by historic standards. Certainly if you're an American household, a French household, even a Spanish or an Italian household, you're paying a lot less for your electricity and your energy in general than you are here in the UK. The energy companies have been a bit tricksy with the government because while they are lowering the energy price cap and the headlines are, well, your energy bills are coming down, blah, 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 the energy providers have actually chiselled out from Ofgem the permission to charge households an extra £2.33 a month on average. And the energy companies say that is money which they need, the energy companies, in order to support households who have got big debts on their energy bills. I don't know about you, but whenever I talk to people down the pub about energy bills, many of them say, well, the energy company's got like £2,000 of my money and it won't give it back to me. What's going on here? So there are lots of concerns about customer balances with energy companies, and it's also worth saying that as part of this announcement, the bit that no one will notice is that the energy companies are being able to charge all households to try and flatter the energy companies' balance sheets, which to me, on first reading, seems a bit odd.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Anne and Ellie. We've had breaking news in the past few moments that Theresa May, the Maidenhead MP, the former PM, is going to stand down at the next general election. We now have a statement from her saying she's taken a difficult decision to step down from her position after 27 years. She says that she doesn't feel that she's able to represent her constituents with the commitment that they deserve. She says she's very proud of her accomplishments as her time as Prime Minister, and she has enjoyed being a backbencher again, but she has decided to take the very difficult decision to step down at the next general elections. That breaking news in the past few moments. We can now go to Westminster and let's speak to the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, Gareth Davies. Really good to see you this morning. That breaking news in the past few moments that Theresa May, the former PM, and of course Maidenhead MP, is to stand down after 27 years. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm learning it through you. I'm so disappointed to hear this. She's somebody who's served this country with great skill and dedication, as you say, for many years. She's known around Westminster as somebody that is completely dedicated to her constituents, despite the significant responsibilities that she's had in government. And I just want to pay tribute to her today for all that she's done, not just for her constituents, but for the country as well.
I mean, we don't fully understand yet, maybe the statement hasn't given us enough detail about why she's decided, whether it's a political decision, whether it's a personal thing. But it does mean that, I don't know, it just struck me that there are fewer and fewer recognisable faces in the Tory party at the moment to stand in the next general election. It's not looking good, is it?
Well, the more we do shows like this, the more recognisable we become. But you're right. It's a shame when we lose talent from the House of Commons. It's always obviously a shame for us in the country, particularly when former leaders and former prime ministers decide to stay in the House of Commons, which is quite unusual. But you know, I think it's fair to say she's done a tremendous amount, and it's been quite a significant amount of time in that role as a member of Parliament, and so she's fully entitled to make this decision today. And as I say, I pay tribute to all that she's done over the last 27 years.
It's International Women's Day today, and it comes in the same week as Sir Mark Rowley said violence towards women and girls is a national security threat, and it needs to be treated in the same way as terrorism and organised crime. So I did want to ask you on International Women's Day what your reaction to that statement is. Quite shocking rhetoric there from Sir Mark Rowley. And how do the Tories ensure to keep women and girls safe in this country?
Well, we take the violence against women and girls incredibly seriously, as you would expect. It's why we launched the Women and Girls Violence Against Women and Girls strategy in 2021. We continue to work on this to ensure that we are taking as many measures as possible to reduce the prevalence. One of the things that I know the Home Office are working on is to reform the way in which police investigate crimes such as rape, and that's already, as I understand it, having an impact. But obviously this is an issue that we need to keep live in our minds and continue to try and focus on. We had the Police Crime and Courts Bill recently, which increased sentences for very serious crimes, again, such as rape. And so we need to be very vigilant to legislation as well and keep making sure that the laws are strengthened, the police have what they need to be able to do to hold perpetrators and criminals to account, and that, as I say, this strategy that we launched in 2021 remains live and strong.
OK, well, we'll leave it there with you at the moment, but thank you very much for coming on the programme. As you say, ever more a recognisable face. Thank you. Gareth Davies there. Thank you.
Trying. Thanks. Aww. See you.
But meanwhile, we're joined by, well, our guest paper reviewers today, who we're going to talk about lots of things in the papers, but I guess we've got to ask them what their reaction is to Theresa May standing down at the next election. Emma Burnell and Andy Williams are with us. Emma, first of all, what do you think?
I think it's really interesting. We were talking in the green room of the prime ministers we've had since 2010. I think Theresa May is the one I respect the most. I think that she was dealt a very, very difficult hand, but I've always thought, despite our very different political outlooks, that she was someone with a real sense of public service.
She's a serious person.
She's a serious person who took it seriously. Yeah. We disagreed on a great many things, particularly when she was in the Home Office. But I never felt that she was politicking as much as she was, you know, really had just a different type of politics than I do. I think this says interesting things about the future of the Tory party in particular. I think that they are losing more and more of those patrician, centrist, old school, one nation Tories. And we don't know what her reasoning is for stepping down, but I think it might be part of her calculation is the change in the party, and is it a party that she still feels able to serve?
Yes, you can't help
however much it's changed.
She must be feeling that. What do you think, Andy?
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's been very interesting to see in the last few years. She stayed on in the House of Commons. She's been very critical of Boris Johnson. She really, really couldn't stand him, let's be honest. She didn't even try to hide it. She's very critical of Liz Truss, and I think she was truly concerned about the direction that the Conservative Party has been going in, because she is basically a as Emma said, a public servant, a centre-ground, middle-of-the-road Tory, and she's seen a party that's basically been radicalised over the last few years. And I wouldn't be surprised if she's looking at it. You know, she's not that old. She's in her late 60s.
67, yeah.
67. And she's probably thinking, why would I put myself through this, you know, what's going to be a dreadful election for people standing as Conservative MPs, and she probably thinks enough's enough.
You can't help but think it's almost like rats fleeing a sinking ship. It's almost as though the writing is on the wall, and slowly but surely these traditional Tories are realising that.
I think that's absolutely right. And if you think about, I mean, she's Maidenhead, that's in Berkshire. I don't think Maidenhead is in the top 400 possibly of Labour target seats. The Lib Dems might give it a bit of a run, I don't know. But there are so many of those traditional Tories that are both looking at losing their seats, but also looking, as Andy was saying, at losing their party. And I think that is a real... that should be a concern both to the Tories in the immediate electoral term, but also for all of us who would prefer to have a rational and sane two sides of the same coin. In the same way that I think that more sensible Tories looked at when Labour went to the far left and said, well, OK, that it may be good for us in the immediate term electorally, but actually in terms of our long-term politics, it's not so good.
It's interesting you're saying about her constituency, Windsor and Maidenhead, very sort of Tory.
Very.
I think. Very
Although
safe,
Windsor Council went to the Lib Dems, didn't it?
But that's my point. Is there any such thing in this next year as a safe Tory seat?
Hardly. I mean, really hardly. It's everything is up for grabs. Unless you're in sort of deepest Essex, which I think is kind of the most Conservative county in the country in terms of and Ellie, your stomping ground. But pretty much everywhere else. I mean, even people like Jeremy Hunt in Surrey, he's at risk. Grant Shapps in Hertfordshire, he's at risk. These are places that should just be absolutely straightforward Conservative holds. The other thing I just want to say about Theresa May that I think is really a really commendable quality is she really unusually in politics lacks ego. She's very much
that's very true, yeah.
She really is somebody who just she's sort of the epitome of keep calm and carry on. And I think, you know, she was criticised a lot for maybe being a bit boring, not my words, but that's sort of how
robotic.
She was described. The May
she
bot.
not since she became a backbencher.
No, exactly. She's had a sort of second spring of life, hasn't she? It's been amazing.
And what really struck me was, we're seeing the pictures now if you're watching on television, was the resignation speech outside Downing Street. It really was quite emotional, wasn't it? Her voice was breaking. She said, I have tried several times. And
the country I love.
The country I love. And do you know what? Reading this statement now, the resignation as an MP now standing down at the next general election, she talks about that kind of sense again, proud of Maidenhead, the constituency. She's so proud to call her home, and she thanks people for their support for 27 years. She does seem to really care about her job.
I can't see her moving out of Maidenhead, and that I think is always kind of a barometer, I think, for how connected an MP is to their constituency, is that you sort of think they'll stay there after they leave.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who live in that constituency, and they love her. Yeah. They really do.
Oh, really?
They trust her, I think.
And that's because even when she was Prime Minister, she was turning up at school fetes and at village hall openings, and all of the day-to-day constituency work that can look really quite mundane and do kind of the hard yards. Yeah. She actually loved doing that. She really did. That was kind of her. She's sort of the archetypal constituency MP, and, you know, as Emma said, she was dealt a bad hand, and she wasn't a brilliant Prime Minister. She wasn't terrible, but she wasn't brilliant either.
I mean, I think that's the thing. We're talking about 4 people of whom she was the one that wasn't terrible.
Andy, how do you think Tory HQ is going to be feeling as a result of this news this morning? Because she joins a list of very high-profile MPs that are stepping down at the next general election. Ben Wallace, Sajid Javid, Dominic Raab, Kwasi Kwarteng, and they're just the former cabinet ministers.
Absolutely, and that's after we've already lost a ton of talent from the Conservative Party in the last 5 or 6 years, partly because some of them have been pushed out, others have just gone, I've had enough. I mean, obviously HQ will brush it off, and the Prime Minister will brush it off and say she's had a good run, she's been an MP for 27 years. But you can't escape the fact that people are looking at the political weather and going, this doesn't look great.
And one thing that is worth commenting on, there was a deadline set, I think it was sometime the middle of last year, when they were all supposed to tell CCHQ whether they were standing down or not, and it just breezed past and nobody paid it the slightest bit of attention. Now that's a very inside Westminster kind of way of thinking, but on the other hand I think it does tell us something about how little discipline there is in the party, that they didn't go, you know, I should be a bit more helpful to the party, give them time to set up, get a new candidate embedded in, and they're all thinking, you know, I'm going to make the decision when I make the decision.
When do we think a general election is going to be now?
That's a big question.
Well, I think we were talking about this the other week, because I know Stephen Dixon is big on May.
It's May.
I just don't think so.
Not
I've never
after
thought
that budget.
so. I think the most compelling logic, if there is any logic in politics, is that if you're the Prime Minister, you're not going to give up that job easily.
Yeah. Well, not even if the rats are deserting the sinking ship. I mean, it will start to look worse and worse, won't it?
I think when you're 27 points or 26 points behind in the polls, you don't call a general election unless you absolutely have to. So I think October, November, maybe even January. I think that'd be a mad thing to do, but it's possible. So I think
really, that's
I mean, the reason for
that.
January, what looks better on your CV? I was Prime Minister from 2023 to 2025, or I was Prime Minister, sorry, 2022 to 2025, or 2022 to 2024. Yeah, we all know that it may be a month in it, but that is what... And ultimately, it's one person's decision. That's the crazy part of this particular bit of our democracy, that nobody else has the power to make that decision except the Prime Minister.
And actually, just on that, Danny Finkelstein, I was in the Times the other day, he was saying, actually, the thing is, Rishi Sunak probably doesn't even know yet when Rishi Sunak is going to call an election, because it's kind of a human instinctive decision.
You'd think it would make sense with the Rwanda bill that you would try and get a plane off the ground, which would mean you'd need the summer, wouldn't you? That's what you'd think.
I mean, the problem with that, though, let's say they get a plane off the ground and the boats still keep coming.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it?
They will in the
that's when it
summer
happens.
as well.
Emma, Andy, thank you very much indeed. Lots more to come on Breakfast, including that breaking news about Theresa May stepping down at the next general election.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Friday the 8th of March. Today,
The former Prime Minister, Theresa May, announces she's going to stand down as an MP at the next general election.
Yes, she was elected 27 years ago, way back in 1997, when Labour swept to victory. Now Theresa May is standing down. I'll bring you more details shortly.
And the man who advises on counter-extremism to the government has today claimed that London is turning into a no-go zone for Jews amid those large pro-Palestine demonstrations.
A damning new opinion poll reveals a large number of people don't trust either the Tories or Labour to handle the economy.
Republican president tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
President Biden there taking a swipe at Donald Trump during his State of the Union speech, and he addressed the attacks also on his age.
I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while.
Protesters are set to demonstrate against the government's decision to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton, 1 year on since the plans were actually revealed.
People are really worried and they feel like they haven't got a voice because the Home Office keeps saying we're engaging with the locals, but they're not.
Meghan Markle allegedly prepares to relaunch her image in the UK, with reports suggesting that the Duchess of Sussex is looking to hire British PR gurus. But can she ever win back the hearts of the nation?
Good morning. Fight night is the Friday night in the desert as Anthony Joshua takes on Francis Ngannou in Saudi. We'll wrap up all the night's football action in Europe, and in cricket, it's bad news for England on day one of the 5th Test in India.
Good morning. There's plenty of dry and bright weather around for many of us today, but there is some rain due tonight. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Very good morning to you. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, it's all go today because we have breaking news that Theresa May has just announced that she is going to stand down at the next election. She's been an MP for Windsor and Maidenhead for 27 years. And of course, during that time, she's been a Home Secretary for a great many of those years. It was about 6 or 7, wasn't it? And then Prime Minister. So what do you think of that? Let's talk now to Labour's Shadow Women and Equality Secretary, Annalise Dodds. A very good morning to you. This has been a bit of a surprise. What's your view on Theresa May deciding to stand down?
Good morning. Well, this is obviously a really significant decision from Theresa May to stand down at the next election. As you said, it is a surprise, but of course we've heard this from a large number of Conservative sitting MPs. They've decided not to stand for the next election. And I think that does reveal that, frankly, there's no confidence in Rishi Sunak, nor indeed in the Conservative Party, to be a party of government for the future. I think this really strengthens those calls for change and those calls for a general election.
You are Labour's Women and Equalities Secretary. I wanted to ask you on International Women's Day what you make of Sir Mark Rowley's comments this week that violence towards women and girls is a national security threat and it needs to be treated in the same way as terrorism. How would the Labour Party ensure that women and girls are kept safe in this country?
Well, it should be taken incredibly seriously, but unfortunately it hasn't been over recent years. And we've seen, for example, the charge rate and prosecution rate for rape really falling through the floor. That's absolutely appalling. The same has happened with domestic abuse as well, when we've seen prosecutions falling precipitously. So we do need stronger action. You know, Labour, quite frankly, we're fed up of so much rhetoric on this and not delivery. We set out really clear plans based on what we know works. So, for example, we would have specialists on domestic abuse, on sexual violence in every 999 control room. We'd have specialist courts for rape in every area. We would make sure also that we were tackling the roots of this with, for example, in our schools, proper education around misogyny. This needs to cut right across every government department, because I'm afraid we're seeing an epidemic of violence against women and girls in our country at the moment.
And we're also seeing, according to the counter-extremism czar to the government, we're also seeing that London is apparently a no-go zone for Jews. I mean, what sort of country have we come to?
Well, everyone has to feel safe everywhere in our country, and that's got to include the capital city as well. And I've been really concerned to see the increase in anti-Semitic incidents that has taken place over recent months. We've seen an increase also in Islamophobic incidents. All forms of hate are unacceptable. They need to be prevented, and they also need to be tackled then and prosecuted by police when they take place. And certainly that's been Labour's approach. We've got to be absolutely firm on this, because, as I said, Anne, everyone should feel safe in our country. That's got to include Jewish people as well.
The Tories rather took the wind from your sails, didn't they, on Wednesday, when they announced that they are also going to scrap non-dom tax status. That's something you've been talking about for several months. It was actually the flagship Labour policy. So I'm now sure many people out there will be wondering how you're going to how you're going to fund your plans.
Well, we always will cost our plans. That's, of course, a big difference between Labour and the Conservatives, and people are still paying the price in their mortgages for the fact that Liz Truss set out those unfunded tax cuts and sent our economy into a tailspin. Labour will set out all of that detail. You know, I think this has been a really humiliating week, frankly, for the Conservatives, because for so long they argued against Labour's plans to make sure that people who live here pay tax here, scrapping that non-dom tax status. And if the Conservatives had adopted Labour's plans when we first called for them, we could have seen them paying for 3.8 million more appointments and procedures in our NHS. I think the question is, what took them so long?
When are you going to outline those plans? Because at the moment, that leaves a £2.7 billion black hole in Labour's plans, because you were hoping to scrap the non-dom tax status in order to raise those funds. Well, the Tories have beat you to it.
Well, we, of course, will set out all of our plans and make sure that every single plan is fully funded. As I said, we've always been clear about that. We would be making a number of changes to taxation. For example, we've said that we don't believe that we should be leaving that money from no VAT or business rates on private schools on the table when the schools that 90% of our kids attend are not well funded. So we would be changing tax there, for example. We have set out those changes, and we will be setting out the detail. But I would say, when it comes to black holes, worth looking at what Jeremy Hunt said about national insurance. He flew a kite of completely scrapping that tax. That would be £46 billion of a black hole. So Labour will always make sure we don't have any black holes, that we set everything out. I'm afraid the Conservatives seem to have a much more blasé attitude to the public finances than we do.
Labour are going to have to hike taxes, aren't they, reading between the lines there?
Well, quite the opposite, actually. And what we've seen, sadly, under the Conservatives is taxes rising to their highest level in 70 years. We've had 25 tax rises under the Conservatives. Labour always wants to see taxes on working people reducing over time. And what I just talked about there was about being really clear and upfront about how we would pay for the additional teachers that we would put into the schools that 90% of children attend. You know, we're being very upfront about those figures, about where we would obtain that money. As I said, by cancelling that removal of VAT and business rates for private schools, I think it's quite right that Labour's being upfront about how we would pay for those promises. As I said, quite a big contrast with what we've seen from the Conservatives over recent months and years.
OK, well, we'll move on now. Thank you very much, Annalise Dodds, for joining us this morning. Let's go to our political correspondent, Katherine Fer, who's there in Westminster, and give us the lowdown on the Theresa May news that she is going to stand down at the next general election.
Yes, quite a moment this, isn't it? Because, of course, Theresa May, beside being Britain's second female Prime Minister on International Women's Day today, represented her constituency of Maidenhead very faithfully for 27 years. She came in 1997 when Labour won that huge landslide. And I think really significant that she chose to announce that she's not standing in the next election. Not in the Times, not to a big broadcaster, but to her local paper, the Maidenhead Advertiser, to whom she gave this exclusive statement. And that story was published in the last half hour or so. And she has said that she launched this global commission on modern slavery and human trafficking. And she's saying that that's taking up so much of her time that she no longer feels that she's able to represent her constituency with the commitment that they deserve. And she said being an MP is about service to one's constituency. And I think that's quite telling, isn't it? Because, of course, she had to give over to Boris Johnson in the end to get Brexit done. As he said, she got into rather a state with Brexit, trying to please everybody, and in the end, pretty much pleasing nobody. And the European Union, the issues with Europe brought her down, as they did many prime ministers before her. But at her heart, she has always been first and foremost a constituency MP. And of course, after she was no longer Prime Minister, she continued going out on the weekends. It's what she loved. It's what she felt was at the core of what being an MP was about. Whereas, of course, David Cameron said he would stay on, and didn't take very long until he was off. She is unusual. And I think whatever criticism you could make of her, she was very much a public servant, and I think nobody could dispute that she was in it for the right reasons.
But Katherine, I'm mystified as to why she's done it today, why she hasn't made a political statement of it. You know, if she'd said, I think the country's going to the dogs, or I don't like the leadership of the Tory party, or we're going to lose anyway, or something. She hasn't made a political point, but she has said that she can't give the commitment to her constituents that she would want to give. Now, what does that all mean, really?
Well, she's saying that's because she's spending so much of her time working on modern slavery and human trafficking, and that is her Modern Slavery Act is sort of one of her proudest achievements, I think, that she would say, and she takes her commitments very seriously. Of course, there's now over 60 Conservative MPs not standing in the next election, including Sajid Javid, Kwasi Kwarteng, Nadine Zahawi, etc. So there's plenty of them. Her constituency was just shy of 20,000. It would seem to be a safe seat, but Maidenhead Council did go to the Lib Dems last year. But, you know, she is 67. She was Home Secretary for many years. She held the highest office in the land. So I think you couldn't say that she's bailing. And one other thing I think worth saying, she did say in the statement, she's committed to supporting Rishi Sunak and the government, and she believes that the Conservatives can win the election.
OK, Katherine Forster there for us in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed.
It's funny, people have occasionally called her boring, but I think since she stood down as Prime Minister, she has become more and more interesting.
Yes.
I mean, her speeches from the backbenches have been riveting, some of them. And do you remember the lovely speech she said about the Queen when the Queen...
Yes, that was lovely.
And she showed that she'd got a real sense of humour as well. I don't know, I think...
She has a sense of humour, and I think you can really tell about Theresa May that she really cares. And I think whoever it was this morning that said she is a politician without ego,
yes.
I think it was Andy, is totally correct. And even the fact, I think, that Catherine's just highlighted, the statement was not in one of the big broadsheets. It was not on her own social media accounts. It was an exclusive statement to her local paper. Yeah. It's class, isn't it? Very classy.
Yeah. I used to work for local radio in that area, and I did an outside broadcast from Bray once, whole morning.
Lovely
of it.
part of the world.
Oh, it was gorgeous. We had Michael Parkinson, and we had Rolf Harris there, and the Vicar of Bray, and Theresa May came along, and she stayed the whole morning.
Did she?
Yeah, and she got on with everybody. It was a lovely morning, but she really was a constituency MP in the true meaning of the word.
And you said she was very popular with people.
She's very, very popular there, yeah.
Well, if you're living in that constituency, Windsor and Maidenhead, do let us know what you think of this news this morning, that your MP of 27 years is stepping down.
Do you think it's still a safe Tory seat? Or it could be a major scalp for somebody to get, couldn't it?
Could it be the Lib Dems? Could it be Reform? Do let us know what you think.
Could it be Boris Johnson?
Well,
you see, he'd be looking for a seat like that, wouldn't he?
Close to home. Yeah, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, it's been a year since plans to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton were leaked to the press as the Home Office tried to reduce reliance on expensive hotels.
Well, since then, West Lindsey District Council and community groups have fought to prevent progress at the historic site, which they say puts a £300 million regeneration at risk.
And now, despite the High Court ruling that government plans are lawful, the people of Scampton are once again preparing to fight.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
Save our Scampton! Save our Scampton!
For a year now, the future of Britain's most iconic airbase has been in doubt. A £300 million regeneration deal at risk. Sarah Carter is from the Save Our Scampton campaign.
People are really worried and they feel like they haven't got a voice because the Home Office keeps saying we're engaging with the locals, but they're not.
1 year ago, media reports began to circulate that thousands of asylum seekers would be coming to Scampton. This led Gainsborough MP Sir Edward Lee to raise the issue in Parliament.
West Lindsey District Council has not still been informed officially that the Home Office is planning to place migrants in RAF Scampton.
Months of protests and a spate of police incidents punctuated a difficult year for the tiny community. 2023 ended with the council losing a judicial review, the High Court ruling Home Office plans are lawful. Few airbases hold the prestige of Scampton. The men of 617 Squadron flew the daring dambuster raids from its runway during the Second World War.
They are sure to be remembered in all histories of the war.
Now West Lindsey is preparing a new legal challenge as the Home Office pushes to secure the site for 3 more years.
There's porter cabins that have just been stuck there for months on end.
Councillor Roger Patterson represents Scampton at West Lindsey.
Unless there's a compromise or unless they back down, we have no future. So it's complete and utter despair.
A Home Office spokesperson said, "We understand the concerns of local communities and are liaising with councils and local services to manage the impact of using these sites on a temporary basis." A year on, and the Home Office vision for Scampton is in limbo. The persistent council here in West Lindsey is hoping planning law can prevent any further progress. Meanwhile, a defiant community says they'll continue to protest even if legal challenges fail. Not a single asylum seeker has moved into Scampton.
I don't believe they'll ever get here. We're trying damn hard to make sure it doesn't happen.
The community is dug in deep. Will Hollis, GB News in Scampton.
Well, let's speak now to the councillor for West Lindsey District Council, Councillor Roger Patterson, who we just saw there in that report. Very good morning to you, Roger. So a year on, still not a single asylum seeker has moved into RAF Scampton. Do you think they'll ever get there?
I'm not sure. The Home Office have told us the word go. Come last July, August, September. They keep saying they're coming, and still haven't anybody here. They've, as I said in the piece there, they've dumped porter cabins on the hard standing where Scampton Holdings want to build our £300 million development. They've not been touched. The stop order that West Lindsey District Council's got prevents them from digging down, so they can't lay water main, sewage or anything else in there. So they're just basically just stuck there. Nobody's turned up. So I'm not sure whether anybody will ever turn up.
And it must be so unnerving, I think, for all the locals, not knowing whether it's ever going to happen and also not knowing how long to keep fighting.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on this plan for 15 years for the eventual closure of the base, which is where the Scampton Holdings deal comes from. And we're not going to give up fighting for that deal till we've lost everything. It's about our future, and without the deal, we haven't got a future. So we'll keep fighting and fighting and fighting until we actually get the deal that we've been working on for 15 years.
And you are going to keep fighting, aren't you? Tell us about this new legal challenge.
Yeah, well, the council's, we've got a legal stop order in place, which the Home Office are ignoring. They're not doing the porter cabins, but they are building on the accommodation blocks. And they've been doing it openly in breach of the stop order for months. We've lost the judicial review, but we've been able to appeal the judicial review. So we're going to appeal the judicial review, and the council's also going to launch another legal challenge over the development order.
Okay, Roger Patterson, very good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
And of course, RAF Scampton was the home of the Dam Busters Squadron. And then I think later the Red Arrows were based there for quite a long time as well. So I think local people feel very, very strongly about it.
Yeah, and I think that's why they feel so passionately about it. Exactly, yeah. And so many of them, Will Hollis has been speaking to them for the best part of a year, have been camped out regularly outside. I mean, they do feel very passionately about this.
People are wonderful, actually, aren't they? When they feel strongly enough, whether you actually support them or not, in their view, I think the people of Britain they actually like a protest, a sort of gentle protest like that, to feel so passionately about something that you'll camp outside there for over a year is pretty amazing.
It's very British, isn't it?
It's very British.
Yeah, especially when it comes to your home and your community. Do let us know if you're from there. gbviews@gbnews.com.
I bet they've had to put up with some pretty bad weather in the last year as well. Shall we find out what it looks like for them today?
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south, though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east, there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland, it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
Ah, the good old British weather.
Ah, yes. Always keeps us on our toes.
Well, yeah. It's time for our latest Great British giveaway. First of all, the winner was Phil from West Yorkshire. And now we've got our latest winner, who's Charles from Stoke-on-Trent. And he won 18 grand in cash. Here's the moment he found out.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British giveaway.
Oh, flipping heck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Flipping heck. That's a big surprise. Flipping heck, I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
We're lucky it wasn't anything worse than flipping it.
I think that's our GB viewers, isn't it? They wouldn't use anything else other than flipping heck.
Oh, good. It's broadcasting friendly, so that's very good. And now's your chance to enter our latest Great British giveaway and win £12,345 in cash, which is
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I said to Ellie a few minutes ago, why would it be £12,345? I didn't see it at all.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's meant to be very catchy, so you can win that and a whole host of seasonal treats, and here's how.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
We're just talking about what the seasonal treats may be, and we said we hope they're Easter eggs. Yes.
And we both like Easter egg chocolate because it's thin chocolate.
True.
Love it. Don't like big chunky chocolate, like Easter egg chocolate.
It's so much better than normal chocolate, so I'm very glad that we're on the same page with that one. So do get involved if you want those seasonal treats, and we hope they're Easter eggs. But do stay with us, because we're going to be talking about lots of exciting things, and also the EU's new ban on single-use plastics, which isn't quite as exciting, but I promise it's better
important.
things. But also important, yes, that's next. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Ellie.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, how do you feel about single-use plastic?
Well, I am very big on single-use plastics. In other words, I don't like them.
Oh, you don't like
because now it's when you get on an aircraft or something like that, and you're served that little meal, and it's all single-use plastics or something. And I've noticed that really over the last year, things are changing.
They are.
There's a lot more bamboo cutlery, for instance, and you sort of start to notice these things. They're still serving drinks in little plastic cups, which you then just get rid of. But I think they're trying.
They are, because...
I think that's interesting.
It is. It certainly is. And the EU has just announced a ban on all single-use plastic packaging in hotels. It's going to come into effect from 2030.
Gosh, that's going to be quite something. It's going to range from mini toiletries, which you love.
Which I love.
Little plastic
and I always
ones,
steal.
which are stupid, because you can never get the shampoo out of them anyway.
It's true. You have to really...
They're really stupid. There's so little. There's no way of actually squirting the shampoo out of them. So that's mini toiletries are going to go. Individual milk portions. Yes.
Is that the milk you get the UHT milk?
Yes.
Maybe for the best.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's disgusting stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe you've got to take your own supplies with you. You'll have to start thinking about it. So do you think it is right for that ban on all plastic packaging?
Well, joining us now to discuss this is journalist Mike Buckley, who is against the ban, and CEO and founder of Climate Explorers, Isaac Kenyon, who thinks it's a great idea. Isaac, let's start with you. Good morning to both of you. But Isaac, you think it's a great idea. Why?
Well, it's a great idea because we do need to move away from plastic. We do need to get away from these environmentally damaging and also damaging forever chemicals that sometimes plastic has. And most of the plastic that we're dealing with that's in food packaging now has maybe endocrine and disrupting chemicals within them that rubs off into our food. So it's quite dangerous for the human health system, disrupting hormones. So we do need to start very urgently moving across, because there is a health crisis coming from just plastics. But I mean, we see it all the time in pictures of birds choking on plastic and things like this. It's awful to see. It's a no-brainer. We do need to move away from this into a more circular economy model and perhaps some other bio-based packaging sources.
Yeah, Mike, how can you possibly defend the use of single-use plastics now?
No, I'm not against the ban. I'm not defending the use of single-use plastics. I'm only against this in the sense I just don't think it goes far enough or fast enough. So they're talking, for example, about reducing in total the use of packaging by 15%, so 15%. So only a very small reduction, really. By the year 2040, that's 16 years away. So while this sounds like a great policy, it's not going anywhere near far enough. And by the way, the law we have in the UK doesn't go anywhere near far enough either. We're talking about getting rid of all possible waste by the year 2042, which is nearly 20 years away. So both in the UK and in the EU, we've got governments talking about this, but they're not going fast enough to reduce the packaging that we need to see reduced.
OK, then, Mike, what would you like to see instead? Have we still got Mike, or is Mike?
Well, I'd like to see both in the EU and in the UK. Yeah, can you hear me OK?
Yeah, we've got you now, Mike. Carry on, sorry.
Great, good stuff. Sorry about that. I was just saying what I'd like to see in both the EU and in the UK is a much swifter move to remove plastic from our system, particularly single-use plastic, because otherwise we're going to keep putting plastic into the system. And as the other gentleman was just saying, there's a lot of single-use plastics in the system. It is causing damage to wildlife and the environment. It is causing harm to us. There's microplastic in all of our bodies. I read recently that every birth that was monitored, they found microplastics in the placenta of the baby, of the birth. This is the world we're now living in, and we should be seeking to very swiftly move beyond it.
I mean, am I right in thinking, Isaac, that airlines, for instance, are going to drop the 100 ml rule, which means that even in your hand luggage on an aircraft, you'll be able to take bottles of shampoo with you, for instance?
I haven't actually covered that specifically myself, so I'll be able to comment on that. But if that is the case, then, that is a slight move forward. I think all of these decisions that are being made on the EU law around, banning single-use plastics and also reducing plastic waste packaging is that step forward. I mean, you take an inch, you start moving forward from that, and then suddenly maybe next year the target will be stretched, and then the next year the target will stretch even more. So it's only the beginning, really, to a more circular model. So although there are small changes, it does feel really insignificant at the moment, because it's, you know, not all of the forever chemicals, not all of the single-use plastic is being banned, and it only applies to sort of largest businesses. Not all small businesses are included. So although, you know, it is very small and marginal, it's still something that will lead to a bigger impact later. And, you know, we've got to take these wins as they come.
OK, Isaac Kenyon, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you as well to Mike Buckley, the journalist, who we appear to have lost. But thank you very much indeed.
I've just been checking that. Apparently, the 100ml liquids rule in hand luggage is going to end, they think, by the end of this year.
Oh, well, that's exciting. It's been trialled in some airports. I flew back from Western Ireland. Aid McGee, you'll be familiar with this, Knock Airport.
Yes.
Best airport in the world. Was there at the weekend, and you didn't need to get your liquids out of your bag.
Best in the world, are you sure?
Yeah.
OK.
But it's tiny, so you just literally walk through. But that was great.
I still did flying from the States, I must say.
Oh, did you? And they still had the 100ml.
Oh, yes,
rule.
they did. But the passengers will be able to take up to 2 litres of liquids and gels, apparently.
I'm very excited about that.
Are you?
Take all my toiletries with me.
Well, you like to take all your shampoo.
I get very stressed when I can't take all my hair care.
You liked the little hotel.
Yeah, I know, but then I like to get my money's worth. Anyway, it's a very complicated person. But Aidan is here. Hello, what have we got coming up in the sport?
Plenty going on, Ellie, not least the dust-up in the desert tonight. Anthony Joshua is aiming for his 4th win in just 11 months as he takes on the former UFC fighter Francis Ngannou, who gave huge problems to Tyson Fury back in October. We'll look ahead to that. And in the cricket, England in deep trouble in India. More after the break.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christy's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christy Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. We were just talking about yesterday's programme, actually, because I was watching you yesterday, and you were talking about International Book Day.
Yes, World Book Day, yes.
World Book Day, yeah. And all the lovely pictures you sent in of children going off to school in their various outfits.
I thought of you. I thought Anne Diamond would like this.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it brings back many, many happy memories. Because there are some times when I had 4, I had to do outfits.
You had your hands full.
Yeah.
All boys.
All boys, yeah. They all wanted to be something from Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. It was always those 2 things, really. They were the only 2 books they read.
You couldn't just stick a bow on a little girl and
No, we did papier-mâché helmets and swords and things like that.
Oh, you're very good. Well, I hope you all had a lovely good World Book Day yesterday. International Women's Day today, so a similar theme. Any messages to your mother, your grandmother, your grandchildren, daughter? Let us know. We'll read some out throughout the programme today.
Who's your hero woman?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Very good one. So keep those coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com. But it is now time to go through the sports with a man. Aidan McGee is here with us. Hello.
Nice to have you.
Nice to see you.
It's still nice to see you on International Women's Day.
Yes, it is indeed. Should we get into some boxing? Just briefly, I want to touch on it because we've got a guest in the next hour, so we'll go into it in more depth then. But Anthony Joshua is up against Francis Ngannou tonight, Ellie. It's been called a dust-up in the desert. The reason it's happening tonight is because we've got the Saudi Grand Prix happening over the weekend. Now, big fight for Anthony Joshua tonight. He's aiming for his 4th win in just 11 months. He's kind of rebuilding his reputation, his career, after a very unsteady few years. Tyson Fury has easily moved out in front, although he's had some problems as well, and not least with Francis Ngannou in October. He's a UFC fighter. He's had 1 professional boxing fight in his entire career, and it makes a mockery that he gave Tyson Fury so many problems, and he could really give problems to Anthony Joshua. This evening, he's come in at the weigh-in yesterday, 1.5 stone heavier, and he's a big puncher. And I think the winner of this, I think we can probably assume that they're going to face the winner of Tyson Fury against Alexander Usyk, which I think is going to happen in May, which if Usyk was to win that and Joshua was to win tonight, that means it's the 3rd time they fight. So all eyes on that this evening. I'll be keeping an eye on that. But as I said, the reason it's happening tonight is because we've got the Saudi Grand Prix over the weekend. And goodness me, we've been discussing it all week. I can't remember a time when, F1's been so dull on the track that it barely gets on the back pages, let alone makes an incursion onto the front pages. We've seen in front of us around all the papers available to us on the desk right now. But there's been an update in the last 24 hours. Red Bull have said that they have suspended the female employee who made the original complaint. The BBC is saying that although the Red Bull have not specified exactly why she's been dispensed with, they're saying it's about an issue of dishonesty. Now, predictably, Christian Horner, who said yesterday, I'm not going to comment, last week rather, he said, I'm not going to comment on unfounded allegations from an unknown source. He said it's time to draw a line with it. It was wonderful if we could all do that every time we got in trouble, say, look, it's time to move on. I think, unluckily for him, it's not going to be like that. And I think now we're seeing a situation where with Honda, the engine partner of Red Bull, saying they want more detail on events, it's very unlikely that, it's very unusual rather, that a company like that would come out and say something like that. It's a sign that some of the sponsors, and it's a hugely commercialised sport, Ellie, it really is. It's very glitzy, it's very glamorous, reputations do matter. And I think that could be the point where the worm turns. It's a sign that the sponsors are getting nervous. And I have to say, with this story first developed probably about a month ago, if you'd said to me it's still going to be running 4 weeks on from now, I'd have said that was highly unlikely.
Do you think he's going to stay in his job? Because, as you say, he was obviously hoping that the storm would pass, but a month on, we've still got it all over the front pages.
Everybody's
it's not dying down.
It's not dying down at all, Ellie. It's a really good point because everything, it's almost like the net is closing on him, and I'm assuming he's guilty here. We should say at this point that nothing's been proven. He's always denied all the allegations, but sometimes there's more to it than that, because it's about how the sponsors feel. You look at Jos Verstappen, the father of Max Verstappen, who's the driver and obviously Christian Horner is the team principal. He's saying that his dad isn't a liar. He speaks the truth. What he's talking about there is that it's tearing the team apart. Now, they're winning, don't get me wrong. Verstappen won 22 out of 23 races last season. He won easily last week. He'll probably win this weekend as well. That's part of the problem. What's happening on the track is dull. This is why this story is achieving so much prominence. And so, yeah, I think in a week's time, he's going to have to ride out a hell of a storm. But I think we're closing in on a point now. I think I'd be surprised if we could see him there this time next week.
Yeah. Can he cling on? Because the bosses surely don't like it being all over the front page.
No, it doesn't.
And
it doesn't.
Not for the sport.
Isn't it?
Mm.
Can I just give you an update on the cricket quickly? Not great for from an England point of view. India currently 315 for 3. They lead by 97 runs on day 2, and the end of the first day session is just is coming to a head now.
OK. Thanks, Aidan. Good to see you.
OK, and we'll be looking through the papers in just a moment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true. I said, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind. For which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me, but I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head. But he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously to no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Anne and Ellie. Really good to have your company this morning. We are going through the papers this morning with political commentator Andy Williams and political consultant Emma Burnell. Very good to see you both this morning.
Morning.
Andy, let's start with you, shall we? On the front page of The Telegraph, London is now a no-go zone for Jews.
So this is Robin Simcox, who's the Home Office's independent advisor on extremism, and he says that if the pro-Palestine protests that are going on in London have been going on for many months, if they continue, that London will have turned into a no-go zone for Jews. I think this is just so overblown. I think it's completely wrong. I think it's divisive rhetoric. We've seen lots of it recently. One of the really, everything that's going on in Gaza at the moment is obviously an absolute tragedy. And one of the less important but really sad consequences that we've seen here in Britain and in London division open up between people of different faiths, different ethnicities. I think it's a real shame. But this kind of extreme, over-the-top rhetoric, I think it's just absolute nonsense.
You think it's over the top to say that London is now a no-go zone?
Absolutely. I think
even on a Saturday?
I do. I think I understand why people might feel uncomfortable in those situations, absolutely. And I think, like any large group of people, like any large protest, there will be a minority of people who are aggressive, who might be violent, who behave badly, who use language that is inappropriate. But I don't think it's right to say that London is a no-go zone for anyone, really.
OK.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There are signs on those marches that are unacceptable and they should be dealt with, but the marches themselves are not anti-Semitic, and it's really important to make that point. Also, those marches are in a really small area of a really big city. When you say London is a no-go area, I mean, which bits are you talking about? Because it ain't Golders Green or Stamford Hill where I grew up. And quite frankly, I grew up in a house in Stamford Hill. I had Muslim neighbours on one side, Orthodox Jewish neighbours on the other side. Everyone rubbed along fine. And I strongly suspect that Stamford Hill is still exactly that way. I just think it isn't fair to say the whole of London is... And I don't know who it helps, because I don't know that that's going to make Jewish people who do feel uncomfortable and do feel, bad, feel any safer if that's what's the rhetoric coming from government.
Having said that, though, is a lot of this to do with optics? I mean, we've just seen there the projections on the Elizabeth Tower. I hope we can get them up again. From the river to the sea, that
absolutely,
chart,
and that
slogan,
was completely wrong.
That's,
totally agree.
In the heart of Westminster. And for any Jew in London, for any Jew in the country, you must not feel welcome when you can see
absolutely.
that.
And I wrote a long newsletter this weekend about protest. I am hugely in favour of the right to protest. Being told not to do it makes me want to do it more. But I haven't gone on any of these protests. And I actually walked past the other day and thought I'd like to go in and have a look, see what this is all about. It was actually that protest. And I thought, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to be photographed there, frankly. And that, for me, says that the people leading the protests are getting it wrong, because the best protests feel inclusive and that you want to be a part of and welcoming to anyone who has even, say, 60% of agreement with you. And I think what they've done is narrowed down the welcoming to people who are only 100% on that side. They must deal with things like that projection. They must deal with things like anti-Semitic signage that are on those marches. But the majority of people on those marches are not doing so because they hate Jews or even hate the State of Israel. And they could certainly hate the current Israeli government. An awful lot of the British Jews I know do. But they are doing it because they are absolutely heartbroken at the tragedy that's unfolding in Gaza. We cannot forget what happened on October the 7th and that tragedy too. There are two groups of very hurt people at the moment, and both of them have a right to their say, and I think that's what needs to be held on to here.
Emma, let's stick with you, shall we, on the front page of The Guardian. Quite extraordinary, actually. Joe Biden announced in the State of the Union speech in the US last night that the US is going to build a temporary port, on the Gaza shoreline. Yeah, quite an important distinction there. Temporary port on the Gaza shoreline to allow delivery of humanitarian aid.
Yeah, this is really important. We are looking at an absolute horrific crisis in Gaza. We're looking at famine. This is, that's the word. That's not a word that's being bandied about lightly. That is what the UN are saying. If things continue, there is a famine in Gaza, and aid is not getting in by road. And that's partly because there's been an overzealous blockading of that from the Israeli forces, and the Americans have been trying to do this diplomatically, to say, you've got to open up more, and I think they've reached breaking point.
Is that in the way that they are planning to do it, is that American aid will be able to be delivered to Gaza from the sea to the shore. But an American foot won't have to tread on
exactly.
Gaza.
So it's a very, very clever workaround that means that they're not putting boots on the ground, which is the phrase that we always use in terms of sending troops in, but they are making sure that those aid convoys are fully protected and get to the people in desperate need.
Yeah. Emma's right about how stark it is. I mean, if you've seen those satellite images of the Gaza Strip and how many hundreds of thousands of people have moved south right down to the border with Egypt, I mean, the mass movement of people in such a short time just shows the scale of the crisis.
What is Netanyahu going to say to this? Have we had any... We haven't had a reaction.
I don't think we've had response from Netanyahu yet. But again, this is where the cleverness of the plot comes, because I believe that the answer is that there will be Israeli checks, but it'll be an American-led aid convoy. And frankly, the Israelis are rapidly losing allies. They really can't afford to stop the Americans from getting this much needed aid into Gaza.
It's a terrible situation, isn't it?
It is. Certainly is. Emma Burnell, Andy Williams, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be back with you after the weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on, quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south, though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east, there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland, it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas, with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning. It is 8 o'clock on Friday, the 8th of March. Today.
Shame when we lose talent from the House of Commons. It's always obviously a shame for us in the country.
The former Prime Minister Theresa May is to step down at the next general election.
Yes, this was announced in her local paper, the Maidenhead Advertiser. She says that she's spending so much time working on modern slavery that she cannot represent her constituents as she would wish. I'll bring you more details shortly.
The man who advises the government on counter-extremism has claimed that London is turning into a no-go zone for Jews. That's after large pro-Palestine demonstrations.
A new damning opinion poll reveals a large number of people don't trust either the Tories or Labour to handle the economy.
Republican president tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
That's President Biden there taking a swipe at Donald Trump during his State of the Union speech, as he addressed the attacks also on his age.
I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while.
Protesters are set to demonstrate against the government's decision to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton, 1 year on since the plans were actually revealed.
People are really worried and they feel like they haven't got a voice because the Home Office keeps saying we're engaging with the locals, but they're not.
And Meghan is allegedly preparing to relaunch her image in the UK, with reports suggesting that the Duchess of Sussex is looking to hire British PR gurus. But can she ever win back the hearts of the nation?
Good morning. There is a dust-up in the desert tonight as Anthony Joshua takes on former UFC fighter Francis Ngannou. We'll hear from Gareth Davies later on this hour.
Good morning. There's plenty of dry and bright weather around for many of us today, but there is some rain due tonight. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
And it's lovely to be with you this morning. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, I've been moaning this morning. It's a very first world sort of moan, though, isn't it? When you're on a luxury cruise ship moaning about the weather. But I went to Hawaii and it should have been outstanding. And it was, but for the wrong reasons, really.
Oh, no.
Just was so unlucky with the weather. It was really bad.
Yeah, to the point where it actually ruined your trip. You were saying that the pools on the ship were closed.
They had to drain the pools because the water sloshing around was, you know, actually quite dangerous, I suppose. And on one night, the entertainment had to be completely cancelled because
they couldn't dance.
Well, you can't dance on a stage that's going like that, can you? So yeah, it was.
Oh dear.
It wasn't
It's
how
not
it
what
was
you
meant
want.
to be. No, and it's such a shame because you look forward to a holiday so much, don't you? And what I'm having to do now is look forward to the next one.
Oh, I'm so sorry because you
I haven't
deserved
got it planned
that.
yet, but I'm going to plan it.
I've been so jealous of Anne Diamond for the past 3 weeks, saying you're in Hawaii, living it up. And I'm really sorry that it turned out to be so horrible.
For Wales, WHALES, because the one really brilliant event was we went whale watching in Maui, which is a particularly famous place for whale. Humpback whales go there to have their calves. And we saw so many. I was hoping to see one. We saw something like 200.
Ah,
there were male whales showing off, doing all their breaching and everything else. There were mum and baby whales. It was just fabulous.
Well, that's a memory for a lifetime.
That is the memory of it. It was a long way to go there for 3 hours of whale watching, but it was brilliant.
3 weeks for three good hours. But anyway, it has got us started this morning on holidays from hell, and it appears lots of you have been in the same position as Anne.
Yeah, sometimes, no matter what you think, and you're going somewhere wonderful, it should be brilliant, and it doesn't work out.
It doesn't work out that way. Sandra says she just got back from a tour of India last night. Oh, you've both just got back from horrible trips. She says it was amazing in some ways, but it did pour with rain the day that she went to the Taj Mahal. Then she went down badly with Delhi belly, and instead of seeing the lovely city of Jaipur, all I saw was my hotel room, especially the bathroom.
Yes. I think we've all had a few holidays like that too, haven't we?
Not good.
I mean, you can't blame anything, except it's just bad luck.
Yeah.
But like I say, you just have to put it down. What the cruise directors always say on the last day of your cruise is that, it's the last day, it's very, very sad, but you're one day nearer your next.
Oh, well, that's
the only way to say it,
as well, isn't it?
It's a very good sales pitch,
yeah. Well, do keep those coming in today. There's holidays from hell.
Breaking news, actually, as well today, because the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, has said, she's announced it just in the last couple of hours, that she's going to be standing down at the next election.
Yes, first elected as Maidenhead MP in 1997, she joins a growing list of Conservative MPs to announce that they will not be standing as the polls indeed start to turn against them.
We've already had some reaction to the news. Here's the Exchequer Secretary, Gareth Davies.
I think it's fair to say she's done a tremendous amount, and it's been quite a significant amount of time in that role as a Member of Parliament, and so she's fully entitled to make this decision today.
But Shadow Women and Equality Secretary Annalise Dodds said it is becoming a common sight.
This is obviously a really significant decision from Theresa May to stand down at the next election. As you said, it is a surprise, but of course we've heard this from a large number of Conservative sitting MPs. They've decided not to stand for the next election. And I think that does reveal that, frankly, there's no confidence in Rishi Sunak, nor indeed in the Conservative Party, to be a party of government for the future.
That was Annalise Dodds there. Well, let's get more from our political correspondent, Katherine Fer. It doesn't half look like rats deserting a sinking ship, Katherine.
Well, indeed, yes, there's now, I think, over 60 Conservative MPs that have announced that they will not be standing in the next general election. People like Kwasi Kwarteng, Sajid Javid, Dominic Raab, etc. So some very big beasts, but Theresa May, of course, the biggest of all, given that she was Britain's second female Prime Minister and was served as Home Secretary for years under David Cameron in the coalition government. So a big moment. And I think it really says a lot about her that she chose to make the announcement as an exclusive statement given to her local paper, the Maidenhead Advertiser. She is at heart a constituency MP, and after she was Prime Minister, she went back to the backbenches and served for 7 years. That's something that David Cameron said he would do, but very quickly found it didn't agree with him. Most former Prime Ministers have not found it within themselves to be able to go back to being a constituency MP in that way. And she said basically that she is spending a lot of time working on modern slavery, on human trafficking. She set up a global commission on these, and she says it's taking up so much of her time that she's no longer able to represent her constituency with the commitment they deserve. And she said that being an MP is about service and one's constituency. So yes, of course, Labour, as we heard Annalise Dodds there, framing it as, oh, look, this is another sign. The Conservatives are on a sinking ship, heading for the rocks. Time for change, time for a general election. And the Conservatives, of course, saying, well, she's been 27 years. She is, after all, 67. She's held the highest office. Who could really begrudge her going at this point? But interestingly, I think she is getting a lot of credit for the fact that she was truly a public servant. And people like Jess Phillips, the Labour MP, tweeting out this morning saying that it's class, she thinks, to make the announcement in the Maidenhead Advertiser, and that she was indeed a proper constituency MP.
Yes, that she was. Katherine, whilst we've got you, wanted to ask you about the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning. This is from the counter-extremism czar, saying that London is now a no-go zone for Jews. He's warning of risks from those pro-Palestinian protests that we've been seeing on Saturdays. Tell us a bit more about this.
Yes, so we've seen these protests in central London and elsewhere around the country happening many Saturdays. Since October the 7th, it's costing the police a lot of money, putting huge pressure on resources. And the next one is coming round tomorrow in central London. So this man, Robin Simcox, he's an independent advisor to the Home Office on extremism, and he's basically saying that he feels that the government has not been tough enough in cracking down on extremism. And he says there's a permissive environment for radicalisation has been allowed to come. And he's saying that they need to be tougher, that they need to crack down on extremist groups. He says groups who propagate extremist narratives but who lurk just below the terrorism threshold. Now, there's a new extremism definition we're expecting to hear from Michael Gove early next week. Some of the suggestions we believe he's keen on, and it's up to the police ultimately, include things like not allowing these protests to continue every time in central London, maybe having them in a different part of the city, or making them static protests, because, of course, as we've seen, hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, many in the Jewish community feeling massively threatened and really feeling that central London is no longer a place for them.
OK, Katherine Forster there for us in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, it's been a year since plans to house 2,000 asylum seekers at RAF Scampton were leaked to the press as the Home Office tried to reduce reliance on expensive hotels.
Well, since then, West Lindsey District Council and community groups have fought to prevent progress at the historic site, which they say puts a £300 million regeneration at risk.
And now, despite the High Court ruling that government plans are lawful, the people of Scampton are once again preparing to fight.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
Save our Scampton! Save our Scampton!
For a year now, the future of Britain's most iconic airbase has been in doubt. A £300 million regeneration deal at risk. Sarah Carter is from the Save Our Scampton campaign.
People are really worried and they feel like they haven't got a voice because the Home Office keeps saying we're engaging with the locals, but they're not.
1 year ago, media reports began to circulate that thousands of asylum seekers would be coming to Scampton. This led Gainsborough MP Sir Edward Lee to raise the issue in Parliament.
West Lindsey District Council has not still been informed officially that the Home Office is planning to place migrants in RAF Scampton.
Months of protests and a spate of police incidents punctuated a difficult year for the tiny community. 2023 ended with the council losing a judicial review, the High Court ruling Home Office plans are lawful. Few airbases hold the prestige of Scampton. The men of 617 Squadron flew the daring dambuster raids from its runway during the Second World War.
They are sure to be remembered in all histories of the war.
Now West Lindsey is preparing a new legal challenge as the Home Office pushes to secure the site for 3 more years.
There's porter cabins that have just been stuck there for months on end.
Councillor Roger Patterson represents Scampton at West Lindsey.
Unless there's a compromise or unless they back down, we have no future. So it's complete and utter despair.
A Home Office spokesperson said, We understand the concerns of local communities and are liaising with councils and local services to manage the impact of using these sites on a temporary basis.
A year on, and the Home Office vision for Scampton is in limbo. The persistent council here in West Lindsey is hoping planning law can prevent any further progress. Meanwhile, a defiant community says they'll continue to protest even if legal challenges fail.
Not a single asylum seeker has moved into Scampton.
I don't believe they'll ever get here. We're trying damn hard to make sure it doesn't happen.
The community is dug in deep. Will Hollis, GB News in Scampton.
Well, let's talk now to Sarah Carter, who you saw there in that report from the Save Our Scampton campaign. Hello there, Sarah. What's it like being under this constant pressure of not knowing whether you've won your battle or whether you've just got to go on fighting ad infinitum?
It's extremely stressful, put it that way. The community around here are sort of like trying to keep the spirits up while sort of waiting to find out what's going to happen. For a year, we never, ever would have dreamt that this would have been the case anyway, but to be held off for a year and still nothing, you know, we've got nothing concrete. They're still working on there, but we've got the legal cases, the stop notice, and it's just everybody's in limbo.
But Sarah, tell us a little bit more about the community, because Anne and I were discussing this earlier. People have been outside RAF Scampton, they've been camping, they've been standing there and honking their horns with flags for a year now, and the fight continues. I mean, there is something beautifully British about it, really, that people feel so passionately about their local community.
We're sort of giving it a nickname, the Dunkirk spirit. It's like, yeah, we need to pull together and we need to fight this. And we've been really lucky that we've had support from not just all over the country, but other countries as well, because, you know, the dam busters were so sort of critical to, you know, World War II, and it wasn't just British people. We had Canadians, Americans, New Zealand, Australians. So, you know, it's rippled out across the whole world, the support that we've had, which is just, I mean, when you're having a bad day, it just helps to get a message from someone completely random on the other side of the world saying, you know, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, you know, helped fight in World War II, and, you know, we commend you for all you're doing, and it's just amazing to have that sort of support.
Something should be done with it, though, shouldn't it?
With the RAF base? Yeah, well, we have an amazing deal that, you know, that's been worked on, like Roger said earlier, for 15 years to make sure that, you know, the history and the heritage wasn't left, you know, to decay or, you know, I mean, Lincolnshire is Bomber County, so, you know, the amount of ex-RAF bases that have been turned into housing estates, industrial estates, and this has got so much history and heritage, we can't just let that happen. So this deal with Scampton Holdings Limited is just, you know, a dream come true, the fact that we can preserve that history, that heritage, but also, you know, create 1,000 jobs for the community, and that will just ripple out across the county, and it will bring more tourism to the area. So it's £300 million of private investment. It's not government money, it's private investment, and the Home Office of just like, well, you know, we're not that bothered, really.
OK, Sarah Carter from the Save Our Scampton campaign. Really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Now let's talk about Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. She is apparently, and you never know quite how much to believe all of this, but apparently she wants to revamp her public image in the UK. And she has reached out to a load of the absolutely top PR gurus here.
Wow, that's as Prince William is set to visit the Earthshot Prize winner at the Oval in London later on today.
It'll be nice to see him out and about again, won't it? Joining us now, our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Hello there, Cameron. Oh, is that the Oval behind you?
Yes, it certainly is, Anne, and Prince William has a very busy day ahead, actually. But one of the questions I get asked a lot is, after where is Kate, it's actually, where is William? We haven't seen him out and about very often recently. And today we might get the answer to that, you know, because he's been working, I've been told, on a new strategy which could, I think, kind of revolutionise how the monarchy works in the country. And it's all about stepping away from so-called traditional royal engagements where he's out and about in public for an hour or two a couple of times a week, and focusing a lot more on his behind-the-scenes work to try and have a real impact on ordinary people's lives. And for example, he wants to support projects, as I said, that has an impact, but his Earthshot Prize, which he set up in 2020, finding solutions to repair the planet over the next decade. Kensington Palace this morning has announced a new deal with one of the Earthshot Prize winners, Notpla, which is a startup based here in London, which has found a way to create food packaging using seaweed rather than plastic, matching them with the UK's leading food caterer for sporting and entertainment venues. And that's why Prince William's at the Oval here today. Prince William actually owns the land I'm stood on, because he owns the Duchy of Cornwall, which is where the Oval Ground is built on. And more than 50 sporting stadiums and venues around the country are now going to have this sustainable food packaging used, cleaning up the oceans. And I understand that Prince William was actually pivotal in this behind-the-scenes deal, working on this deal with them, because he really wants to scale up these solutions. So I'm told he's working 7 days a week on supporting Earthshot winners. But is this going to be palatable with the public? It's a big move, a big gamble. The late Queen always said that members of the royal family have to be seen to be believed. And if Prince William's doing loads of work behind the scenes and not being seen in public that often, then perhaps there could be an issue there with the public. But I'd insist that it's in addition to his work in public. It's not replacing it. And so royal fans hopefully will not be too disappointed. But I guess we'll have to wait and see if this gamble pays off and there is a true impact on people's lives.
And people do really want to see him as well. We can feel that appetite now that he's had a quieter few weeks, well, in the public eye at the very least. Obviously, a lot on his plate at home. Look, we need to ask you about Meghan, or the Duchess of Sussex, apparently looking to revamp her image in the UK. Tell us a bit more about this. And can she really change her image and the perception that many people have of her here in this country?
Yes, so this is an exclusive in the Mail this morning. It's not been confirmed by Meghan and Harry's team, but if true, it does fit with this narrative that we've seen over the last few weeks, haven't we, of first the rebrand of their Sussex.com website, then of course we had Prince Harry and Meghan doing some philanthropic work in the mountains in Canada for the Invictus Games. And at the same time, we've got their opinion polls on both sides of the Atlantic, let's be frank, not very good. Meghan is only one above Prince Andrew in terms of members of the royal family popularity ratings, according to the latest YouGov poll. So she does have an image problem here in the United Kingdom. I don't think the British public cared too much for Meghan and indeed Harry complaining about their time as working members of the royal family. So it looks like that Meghan is wanting to really create a better image for herself here in the United Kingdom, at the same time that the King's obviously been diagnosed with cancer, Kate's out of action, William is clearly not doing as many public engagements for reasons I've just discussed, and the rest of the working royals are ageing, and it's thought, according to a source speaking to the Mail, that Harry and Meghan could fill that void of public-facing royal engagements here in the UK. But as I said, nothing's been confirmed, so we'll have to wait and see, and indeed if it does improve their image.
It's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? Cameron, thank you very much. Enjoy the cricket. Or whatever's happening in there today. I'm surprised she cares.
Yeah, I think she does care a lot about her image and her reputation around the world. I didn't think she cared so much about what the British people thought.
Do you know, I think we'd forgive her if they came back and did the right things. You know, brought the children, did a bit of waving, and apparently there's a chance that the Invictus Games is going to come back to Britain next time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we're going to see a bit more of Prince Harry around doing that. So I think we'd forgive them if they just did the right things. Do they have to say sorry, though? I don't think they're going to do that, are they? They're expecting a sorry, frankly.
Well, yes, and maybe that's what people want to know. I think people definitely forgive Harry. I think there's still a lot of love and affection there for Harry. People, especially after what happened to his mother, do have a soft spot in their hearts for Harry.
I think people would forgive her if she just brought the children and showed us what they look like and how they are. And yeah, we want to see a happy family, don't we?
We do, yes. And I think the British people are very forgiving, actually. Let us know what you think about that. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Is it time for the weather?
It is.
It is. Here's Annie Shuttleworth.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on, quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland, it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
Well, it's time now for our latest Great British Giveaway. First was Phil from West Yorkshire. He won our first ever one. Now we have our latest winner, Charles from Stoke-on-Trent, who won £18,000 in cash. Here's the moment he found out he'd won.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
Oh, flipping heck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Flipping heck. That's a big surprise. Flipping heck, I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, now's your chance to enter our latest Great British Giveaway and win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's £12,345 in cash and a whole host of seasonal treats.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
We're laughing. The seasonal treat is not an Easter egg, which we would be very happy with.
Yeah, we were very excited at the thought of Easter eggs because we like that very thin chocolate that Easter eggs are made from. But apparently it's a pizza oven.
Yeah, which is probably better.
I could go a pizza too.
Yeah.
I really could. OK, do stick with us. It's 27 minutes past 8. Coming next, we'll be talking to Major General Chip Chapman about defence and the lack of it being mentioned in the spring budget. That's next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Our woke army, a topic we talk about almost every day on this show. And now the decision to allow women to join frontline army fighting has been described as a failed exercise in political correctness, because government figures reveal that only 15 female recruits completed basic training for either infantry or tank units between January and September of 2023. A senior army officer says women are put off joining frontline units amid numerous allegations of rape and sexual discrimination. Well, joining me now is former NATO commander and Royal Navy officer Rear Admiral Chris Parry, CBE. Chris, always a pleasure to see you on the show. So here we are again. We're talking about diversity targets, and it seems that no matter how much they huff and they puff, young women simply aren't joining up.
Well, I mean, the life's not for everybody, Martin. It's not even for most men, to tell you the truth. This is a tough life, and it's a life that is geared towards the sort of physical and mental, I hesitate to say skills, but aptitudes that men have. You know, the idea that men and women are interchangeable in all these roles is ridiculous. What we need to have is all roles open to both men and women, and those that are suitable and have the aptitude for those jobs should be going into them. If we've got 15 women who are going into the infantry and the armoured corps, then that's fine. They're the ones that are suitable. It's as simple as that. Any idea that we should have quotas or any sort of percentage of people from certain ethnic groups or from women is ridiculous. We want the best people who serve our country and can defend it.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning again and welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Ellie this morning. We've been talking about Theresa May's sudden announcement this morning that she is going to stand down before the next election. She will not be seeking re-election. And we were generally paying tribute to her. But you don't like her.
No.
John says she's a complete disaster as far as policing is concerned. She drastically cut police numbers. She chastised the Police Federation for telling her what the results of her cuts would be. And look what's happened.
Yep, lots of you agreeing with that. David says, as a retired police officer, I've got no sympathy or feelings for Theresa May. Our police force is now a laughing stock due to her.
Yeah, and Peter also agrees, said, all I remember her for is getting rid of 10,000 policemen.
Hilary says, I live in her constituency, which is Windsor and Maidenhead. I've always voted Conservative, but all she did was get her photo in the paper. We wouldn't have voted for her. A terrible PM, didn't believe in Brexit and cost us a fortune.
And Steve says, why are there so many tributes to Theresa May? She failed as a Home Secretary and destroyed policing because she wouldn't stand up and do the right thing when police numbers were being cut. She failed as a Prime Minister because she wouldn't stand up and be robust with the EU during Brexit. She's only ever succeeded at failure.
Yeah. And Gordon says she will only be remembered for screwing up Brexit, a silly walk, a P45 and screeching nothing has changed. Good riddance to her, says Gordon. Well, you don't mince your words.
No, clearly not.
Do keep your feelings coming in on Theresa May. And indeed, any of the stories that we're talking about this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, do you remember the budget? When was it? Yesterday, day before?
Wednesday.
That's right. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, delivered his spring budget on Wednesday.
Yes, but one department that was not mentioned was the Ministry of Defence. Well, this comes as the gap between what the government wants to do and the ministry's budget balloons to nearly £17 billion.
Well, let's find out what he thinks from the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman. It's lovely to see you this morning. And I don't know if you've seen the front page of the Daily Mail, but the Mail is really worried about the fact that there was no money for defence. They say not for decades has the world felt so dangerous, yet the budget didn't give an extra penny to defence. What do you think?
Well, I don't think the budget is the place to give money to extra money for defence. That's really about fiscal and monetary policy. And currently the defence budget is set by the Comprehensive Spending Review 21 to 25. So you might see an uplift at the end of that period, i.e. when there's a new election. What is true is there is a problem in the gap, particularly the rhetoric-reality gap in the equipment plan. not only that 16.9 billion that Ellie mentioned is there, but that is a figure which also came out last year from the National Audit Office when it said that the Ministry of Defence are currently talking about fantasy numbers. Now, what that really means in reality is that you get less kit bought or less equipment for the amount of money you've got in the budget. So, for example, the T-45 destroyers that we see in the Red Sea at the moment, the original aspiration was for 12. That was then cut to 8. We ended up with 6. At the other end, the F-35Bs, the 6th-generation fighters that are used by both the Royal Air Force and to go on the aircraft carriers. At the moment, we've ordered 48. We have an aspiration for 138. Most people think the final fleet will be 60 to 80. So there is this rhetoric-reality gap. It is an unsafe world, but the Russians are suffering, of course, at the moment. They've lost 2,900 main battle tanks. They're fielding T-55s and T-62. That is tanks built in 1955 and 62. So it is an unsafe world, but that doesn't mean the Russians are going to come across any border. It's also worth just ending on that, on saying that Chief of Defence Staff on the 27th of February said that the talk that Britain is undefended and an armed forces chronically imperiled is way off the mark. There are things that the British armed forces still do very well. It could still be bigger and have more equipment in certain areas.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the comments of the ex-Armed Forces Minister Mark Francois, who said the Defence Secretary recently warned we are moving from a post-war to a pre-war world. But nobody seems to have told the Treasury. Does Russia have to get to Warsaw before we start spending what we need to on defence? Now, there is this school of thought, isn't there, that defence, especially in an election year, is not a vote winner. And do you think there is perhaps a point there from Mark Francois that unless you are in the throes of war, that it's not a priority?
Well, I don't think it is a priority if you're geographically separated from Russia. Because you mentioned Warsaw there, which of course is in Poland, Poland's defence budget this year is 3.8 to 3.9%. Those which border Russia, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, their budget is also bigger. Now, the pre-war talk, in my view, is dangerous. We are actually in the longest peace period since 1945. The best way to preserve that peace, in my opinion, is to support Ukraine so that it succeeds militarily on the battlefield, and ultimately that leads politically to the removal of Putin.
OK, Major General Chip Chapman, really good to see you today. Thank you so much for your time.
And Aidan is here at the end of the studio. Don't know why he's over there, actually, but what's coming up in the sport?
Well, there's a small matter of a bust-up in the desert this evening, and Anthony Joshua takes on former UFC fighter Francis Ngannou in Saudi Arabia. We'll be hearing from boxing journalist Gareth Davies after the break.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're we're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Ellie.
And can I just apologise if you can hear my stomach rumbling?
I could hear it rumbling.
I know, it was having a go, wasn't it? I think when you go away for a while, you get into a different routine of eating, and it's expecting breakfast.
Was it all-inclusive?
Yeah, yes.
That's all you could do, couldn't you? Because the weather was so bad.
I
All you
ate
could do
for
was eat.
England.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, I did my bit.
That's what you have to do on your holiday. It's good
I've
for
now
you.
got to starve. There you go.
Oh dear, I have to get back into a routine now. Oh dear. Well, it's time to go through all the latest sports news now with Aidan McGee, who's going to cheer us up and distract us from our rumbling tummies this morning, aren't you?
Well, I hope so, yeah. A feast of football last night, of course, in
yes, very good.
the Europa League. Lots of British clubs in action. Aston Villa, Rangers, Brighton, West Ham, Liverpool, all amongst them with various mixed results. But it's the boxing I want to concentrate on in this hour, Ellie, because Francis Ngannou takes on Anthony Joshua tonight in Riyadh. It's happening this evening. It's unusual for boxing to take place at such a big fight as this on a Friday, as opposed to a Saturday, but it's because of the Saudi Grand Prix. And I'd like to introduce, if I could, Gareth Davies, the boxing journalist who joins us now from Riyadh. I think that's right. I'm right in saying, Gareth. First of all, welcome to GB News. How much of a challenge will this be for AJ tonight, because he's going for his 4th win in 11 months, but in terms of re-establishing his reputation as an elite fighter, if that's fair to say, he's got a little bit of work to do.
Indeed. Good morning, Aidan, from Riyadh here, sunny Riyadh. Yeah, he's got a lot of work to do. Look, he's getting a boatload of cash for this fight, of course, against Francis Ngannou, who shocked the world in his first kind of major boxing match against Tyson Fury last October, knocked Tyson Fury down in the 3rd round and kind of beat him up in the 8th round in a very close fight that was scored a split decision, of course, by the judges. But now that he's a player in the division, Anthony Joshua really loses legacy if he loses this fight. It's unthinkable for him to lose him anyways, even though there is genuine jeopardy in the fight, Aidan. And I think that the key for Joshua tonight is that he just starts with all the momentum that he showed here in December against Otto Wallin and bust him up and stopped him in the 5th round. There's always pressure on Anthony Joshua. He's a superstar. We expect so much from him. And if he's to be a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world and fight Tyson Fury or the winner of Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, he's got to get the job done. But Ngannou is dangerous the entire time he's in there.
Can we read too much into the weight difference? Because he's giving away, AJ, this is about 1.5 stone in weight, isn't he?
Yeah, 20-odd pounds. No, Ngannou's the same weight as when he fought Fury, so he's going to be up for 10 rounds. I mean, it really is the rumble in Riyadh. They're calling it knockout chaos here, by the way. And it's 2 giant men. It's been an amazing build-up all week. We've been in a Greek amphitheatre all week in part of the Riyadh season in the boulevard here. They're both brilliant characters. Tyson Fury was here as well, by the way, kind of stirring it and arguing with Francis Ngannou. But Joshua and Ngannou, 2 giant men, flying fists. It really will be knockout chaos tonight. As you say, a Friday fight night. Joshua's just got to get the job done. No matter how he gets it done, he's got to get it done. Otherwise, I say, as I say, the legacy is dented in a huge way.
And Gareth, is the reputation of boxing as a sport at stake to some degree tonight? I mean, as you said, Ngannou's only had one fight as a boxer. I think there was some rankings published before Christmas, if I remember rightly, saying he was number 10th or 11th in the world on the back of one fight. I mean, where does that leave the boxing as a sport? Because it's been quite a tough couple of years for it as a sport, hasn't it?
Yeah, I know. I think the injection of investment from the Saudi Arabians has really brought all the heavyweight fights together, where guys weren't agreeing to fight on the purses and all those kind of things, and it's really ignited the division. We've got like a super league of heavyweight fights. We see the pics of Anthony Joshua and Ngannou. Great gentlemen with each other this week, by the way. No, I think Ngannou has got an extraordinary story, loads of intangibles in his life. He's an anomaly as a boxer. There he is. Look, I mean, what physicality on the two guys. Both 6'5", 6'6", 200 and, as you say, 252 pounds. Anthony Joshua, 272 pounds. Francis Ngannou. It really reminds me of the Rumble in the Jungle with Ali and Foreman all those years ago. Cameroon versus Nigeria here, and obviously Anthony Joshua, a British Nigerian. But I think boxing's not under scrutiny in many ways, because Ngannou has got an incredible story. Came out of Africa in his mid-20s, won the UFC heavyweight title. An incredible journey to become imprisoned in Spain. 6 times he tried to cross the Mediterranean in a dinghy from Morocco to Spain. You know, he had to sleep on the streets of Paris, found an MMA gym, wanted to be a boxer, found a mixed martial arts gym, and ended up as the UFC heavyweight champion. He's an extraordinary man. He's had an incredibly difficult life, so this is just a bonus for him.
Gareth, I'm going to have to stop you there, I'm afraid, because we do need to go to a break. But thanks very much indeed for joining us. You call it knockout chaos, or the Rumble in Riyadh. I call it the dust up what do they call it?
Dust up in the desert.
That's it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I remembered it, Aidan. Thank you very much. Thank you.
OK, do stay with us, because next up we'll be delving into the papers.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christy's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christy's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Get this right, we all know by now, don't we, that so many NHS workers are abused by people that they're trying to help. We'll all agree that that is pretty damn disgraceful, but what do we do about it? Because now some London hospitals are looking at whether or not they should be able to ban people that do this for a year from those hospital facilities. Is that the way forward? Daniel, do you like this? No abuse, no excuse, that is the campaign?
There's no other choice for most people. It's either the NHS or nothing. And if you're going to take that monopolistic power, then you need, I think, you have responsibilities towards people. You can't cut them off. So there are ways in which, of course, you can bring criminal charges against them. If they commit a criminal offence, that's fine. They might even be locked up in jail. But what you can't do is cut off health services because you're the only supplier.
Well, yes, I think you can cut it off, and you should cut it off. London is very different from everywhere else, and it goes back to a conversation about immigration. The majority of nurses in London are either African or Filipino, and it harks back to their nature and their culture. When you're younger, your parents look after you. When you're older, you look after them. They don't go into homes. So there's a way that a threshold of tolerance they have that is above and beyond most people. So, because I found like when I was younger, most of the nurses were white. Now they work in hospitals in Ascot and Somerset. London is the war zone. I have seen horrific things happen to nurses, and they stay. They show up for work. There's a protection they are owed. beyond owed. And if you abuse something that's offered to you as a part of your citizenship, there should be a penalty for that. For the same reason,
you're obliged to use it. There's no offer involved in the NHS.
But there is an offer, because at the end of the day, like, you should figure out how to get money and go private. So just because you've created something that gives you no, it's easy. If it's
that's
easy,
an impossible solution.
They've created something that's kind and easy and beneficial to all, indeed. But it's a good thing for all. Do not abuse it. That simple.
Welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Ellie. And we've had some breaking news in the past few moments. This is from the US Embassy in Russia that is warning of a terrorist attack that could take place in Moscow within the next 24 hours. It's been repeated by the UK Embassy there, and it urges citizens to avoid large gatherings over the next 48 hours. It says it's monitoring reports that extremists have imminent plans to target large gatherings in Moscow to include concerts. And Russia's Federal Security Service said that its agents have thwarted a potential Islamic State terrorist attack on a Moscow synagogue, with Russian media reporting that militants behind that plot were killed. So that breaking news from UK and US embassies in Russia of a potential terrorist attack taking place in Moscow within the next 24 hours. That has just emerged. We are joined now by political commentator Andy Williams and political consultant Emma Burnell. Andy, let's start with you and your reaction to this news.
Yeah, so not long after Alexei Navalny's funeral, obviously turmoil going on in Russia. I think the concern is, excuse me, how might Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin exploit a situation like this? Might they crack down further erode people's civil liberties in Russia? Really, really worrying time.
Emma?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously, you have to address terrorism threats, whoever they are against, wherever they're happening. But we know we're dealing with a very repressive state in Russia, and these terrorist threats can easily become a threat to the citizens of Russia and their right to stand up to Putin. Even more of a threat.
It does feel like an increasingly dangerous world that we're living in at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm old enough to remember 9/11. I was in America on 9/11, and the aftermath of that. And I don't think that the world has felt this unstable since that moment, since that time. And I'm also, because I really am quite old enough to remember when the Berlin Wall came down, and the hope of freedom that followed that, and the idea that terror was, and that bipolar world was over. And I'm afraid that was a very, very naive hope.
Well, on that note, did you find it curious that defence was not mentioned in the spring budget on Wednesday?
Yeah, I did, because we need to be funding not just traditional defence, things like the Army and the Navy and what have you, but also we need to be looking really seriously at investing in things like cybersecurity. Hacking and these sorts of aspects are massive threats to the UK from countries like Russia, from China, who are investing a lot of money in some very clever people who can do a lot of damage by getting into the sort of the systems of the British state. So yeah, absolutely. I just want to make one point about geopolitics and security generally, which is what happens in America in November is going to be hugely significant.
Absolutely.
And when you have, Joe Biden delivered his State of the Union address last night, by all accounts delivered actually quite a good performance. Haven't seen it yet, but apparently he did. And he made the point that Donald Trump was saying Vladimir Putin has the right to do whatever he likes. And no US president in American history would ever have said anything like that. And that is a really worrying, dangerous thing if Donald Trump becomes president again, which is maybe more likely than not.
Indeed, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Don't you think Putin might actually be more wary of Trump?
No.
Because he too will do what the heck he likes.
He will do what the heck he likes, but what he likes is Vladimir Putin, and that's the problem.
Well, we don't know that he likes him.
Well,
we just know that...
We do, because we saw him in Finland saying, this guy's great, I can totally work with this guy's amazing. And that was after a lot of the repressive crackdown in Russia. It was before Ukraine, but it was, I think it was after the first incursion into Ukraine.
But Trump says things like that to infer that he can get on with somebody, he can talk to them and get them to see his point of view.
Yes or no?
No,
I think he just likes strong men. The strong man type of leadership. And I think that he has so little understanding of geopolitics that it's all about who will or will not kiss the ring for Trump.
But then we had a very curious incident, didn't we, Andy, in February when President Putin was asked who he would back in the US election, and he said Biden, because he's predictable, which perhaps links into that idea that at least you know where Biden stands.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I think
it's trolling.
I was going to say, I tend to think he's just taking the mick, actually, and just winding people up.
I think he was trolling us, and I think he was definitely trolling, what's his name, that terrible interviewer who just made such a...
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson, thank you. I think that Putin ran rings around him and was clearly just, by the end of it, having a laugh.
Just when you think it might be safe to go out, they're talking about Liz Truss making a comeback.
Oh, my goodness.
You've only got about 40 seconds, but give us your lowdown on...
Can I say that on International Women's Day, I would rather celebrate anybody else in British politics than Liz Truss.
OK, and Andy?
Well, all I'm going to say is that new poll this morning, Conservatives on 20%, according to YouGov, down to 18% in another poll, lowest since polling began in the 1940s, and that is in no small part due to the damage that Liz Truss caused.
Gosh. OK.
Well, let us know what you think of that. Do you think Liz Truss should make a comeback?
Did you say Liz Trash, then?
Liz Truss? What
sounded like?
Truss? Is that what you wanted to hear, perhaps? Annie Shuttleworth has your weather for you.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south, though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east, there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England too, but across northwestern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland, it should stay fairly dry and bright. That drizzly rain, though, will come and go for more southern areas with a risk of some heavier showers in any brighter breaks in the south later on. That's all for now. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
Kinsey, great to have you back on the show. Now, listen, we're not slated to talk about the Prince Harry story, but I've kind of surprised a few people by suggesting that I think he should have armed royal protection when he's in Britain. What do you think?
Well, they aren't my tax dollars that are paying for Prince Harry's protection, but I agree with you. I think that he should feel safe, and he should feel safe to bring his family back to see his father, if that's the case.
Well, his stepmother, Kinsey, Queen Camilla, gets a well-deserved break. Tell me more.
That's right. Queen Camilla has no engagements on her agenda this week, with the Times reporting that she will spend a few days of downtime with the king. Camilla has been working overtime to support the monarchy. Just last month, she repeatedly drove over 6 hours to a royal engagement after her flight was grounded because she reportedly did not want to let down her husband. She will resume engagements on March 11th, representing the king and leading the royal family for the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. A source told the Times, although she was not expecting to find herself in the position of leading the family, the Queen is absolutely prepared to do whatever needs to be done for the institution. And can I just say, speaking of Harry, I think the fact that Queen Camilla is seen as leading the family is significant proof that Prince Harry would not return to temporarily support the family, because Camilla's elevated position is likely not something sitting well with him right now. He loved Queen Elizabeth II. He likely resents the idea of Queen Camilla. And we know that that's a position he felt like his mother should be in.
Most definitely. He was very nasty about Queen Camilla in his book Spare.
He was. So I imagine that the idea of her leading the family is something he has a hard time digesting.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Friday, the 8th of March. Today.
Shame when we lose talent from the House of Commons. It's always obviously a shame for us in the country.
Well, the former Prime Minister Theresa May has announced that she's going to stand down as an MP before the next general election.
Yes, Britain's second female Prime Minister joins around 60 Conservative MPs who say they're not standing in the next election. I'll bring you her reasons shortly.
The man who advises the government on counter-extremism has said that London is turning into a no-go zone for Jews amid large pro-Palestine demonstrations.
A damning new opinion poll reveals a large number of people don't trust either the Tories or Labour to handle the economy.
Republican president tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
That's President Biden there taking a swipe at Donald Trump during his State of the Union speech, which happened overnight. And the White House has now warned that a terror attack is apparently likely in Moscow during the next 24 hours.
Meghan Markle is allegedly preparing to relaunch her image in the UK, with reports suggesting the Duchess is looking to hire British PR gurus. But can she win back the hearts of the nation?
Good morning. There's plenty of dry and bright weather around for many of us today, but there is some rain due tonight. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Good to be with you. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, a bit later on, we're going to be talking to our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, about Meghan and about William as well, who's out and about today. But we were saying maybe the British public would forgive Meghan if she just came and as a family they started to be part of Britain again. Well, you don't think so?
No.
In fact, you were pretty tough on Theresa May about an hour ago, and now you are being on Meghan. Carol says, "I'm sorry, but I could never forgive her, not after that curtsy, when she laughed about it. So disrespectful to our late Queen. And if Harry had been a man, he would have told her off."
There is so much love, really, for the late Queen, and that's what's coming out here of these emails.
That was terrible, that
it wasn't good.
Curtsy, it was awful.
That wasn't good. Leah says she will never be forgiven for the hell that she put our late Queen through whilst grieving for her husband and whilst she suffered with her own health. The curtsy, again, the lies about racism, the fake stories, no. Take one look on social media if you think that she'd be forgiven.
That's interesting. Robert says, "Forgive Harry and Meghan, never. They are only for themselves, and their popularity in the US is dropping drastically, and now they want our sympathy, but no.
Dorothy simply makes the point, Meghan should make peace with her own father before expecting us to accept her.
Interesting, isn't it?
Very. Do keep your views.
You watch social media a lot. I don't engage with it, as they say. What are other feelings about it?
I feel like it's very divisive, as are most things these days. But yeah, with Harry and Meghan, there is a lot of hatred on things like X. But they also have very, very supportive fans as well. So
yeah, you don't talk about it in our household because it tends to divide opinions.
Yeah.
Quite fundamentally.
It does.
Some people are totally for her and totally see it her from her perspective, and other members of the family don't.
Yeah, so, no, it's probably wise, isn't it?
Like Marmite or Monopoly, there are certain things that have to be banned in our house.
Probably for the best. But I do think the divisiveness of it all does come down to her. I think generally with British people, when I'm out and about speaking to people on stories, there is still a lot of love and affection for Prince Harry. I think because of a lot of what he's been through. And his late mother. I think there is a lot of love there.
I think since he lost his mum, he's been looking for a strong woman. And he's found one. And I don't know, maybe we were never going to like who he picked. Although I think we did very much at the beginning, I really do.
She was welcomed with open arms, yeah. I mean, the scenes on the wedding day were just wonderful.
Yes, they were. It was brilliant.
And that is what is such a shame, really, isn't it? I mean, they could have had just a wonderful role within the Commonwealth and been very, very popular.
Yeah, and they would be needed now, wouldn't
especially now.
Anyway, shall we get on with what's become the top story when the announcement was made, about 3 hours ago now? The former Prime Minister, Theresa May, has said she will not be standing in the next election. She is standing down as an MP.
Yeah, she was first elected as Maidenhead MP in 1997, and she joins a growing list of Conservative MPs to announce that they will not be standing as the polls turn against the Conservative Party.
Well, we've already had some reaction to the news. Here's the Exchequer Secretary, Gareth Davies.
I think it's fair to say she's done a tremendous amount, and it's been quite a significant amount of time in that role as a Member of Parliament, and so she's fully entitled to make this decision today.
But Shadow Women and Equality Secretary Annalise Dodds says it's becoming a common sight.
This is obviously a really significant decision from Theresa May to stand down at the next election. As you said, it is a surprise, but of course we've heard this from a large number of Conservative sitting MPs. They've decided not to stand for the next election. And I think that does reveal that, frankly, there's no confidence in Rishi Sunak, nor indeed in the Conservative Party, to be a party of government for the future.
Well, let's get more now from our political correspondent, Katherine Forster. Katherine, how do you think this is going to go down with Conservative central office?
Well, this is quite a moment, isn't it? We've had now around 60 Conservative MPs say they won't stand in the next election. Some big beasts among them like Sajid Javid, Kwasi Kwarteng, Dominic Raab. But Theresa May, of course, the biggest of them all, only our second female Prime Minister in this country, and also she was Home Secretary for many years under David Cameron. So, yes, it's quite a moment. I'm sure the Conservative powers that be would prefer that she was not going and will be concerned about the signal this may send. As Annalise Dodds, the Labour chair, said, of course, Labour will frame it as, look, they realise the way the wind is blowing, time for a general election, time for change. But the way the Conservatives will frame it is rather different, of course. I think worth looking at what she said in this statement, which she gave notably not to the big broadcasters or to a big broadsheet, but to the Maidenhead Advertiser, her local paper. She said, since stepping down as Prime Minister, I have enjoyed being a backbencher again and having more time to work for my constituents and championing causes close to my heart, including most recently launching a global commission on modern slavery and human trafficking. She goes on to say, these causes have been taking an increasing amount of my time. Because of this, after much careful thought and consideration, I've realised that, looking ahead, I would no longer be able to do my job as an MP in the way I believe is right and my constituents deserve. I have therefore taken the difficult decision to stand down at the next general election. And I think whatever you may think of Theresa May and her failure to get Brexit done as Boris Johnson ultimately did, she got into a terrible mess over Brexit, didn't she? She basically tried to please everybody and ultimately pleased no one. And we got a real deadlock in Parliament as a result. But nobody would doubt that she was a true public servant and a real constituency MP. And after no longer being Prime Minister, but spent 7 years as a backbench MP, that's something that David Cameron said he would do, found he didn't last very long, though of course he's back as Foreign Secretary. Former PMs generally can't take that blow to their ego, but Theresa May could. So I think sad news, most people will say that she's going. She will see the Modern Slavery Act as one of her greatest achievements. This is something she feels closely about and wants to keep working on. Worth noting, I think, that her constituency, Maidenhead, she has a majority of just under 20,000. In normal circumstances, it should be a safe Conservative seat. But who knows, now that she's not standing, who knows whether ultimately that might potentially fall to the Liberal Democrats.
Katherine, whilst we've got you, I wanted to ask you about the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning. The comments from the counter-extremism czar warning that London is now a no-go zone for Jews. Tell us a bit more about this.
Yes, these are comments made by Robin Simcox. He's the extremism czar for the Home Office. He's written in the Telegraph today, and it makes the front page, basically saying that many Jews feel now that they can't go into central London. They don't feel safe because we've seen these protests, these pro-Palestine marches many, many Saturdays since the atrocities of October the 7th. The next one is coming round tomorrow, starting at 12 o'clock, and they have been controversial because, of course, people have the right to protest, but sometimes there are slogans, banners, chanting, which some people feel crosses the line. And Robin Simcox has basically said that we have allowed this country to develop a permissive environment for radicalisation. He's saying that the government needs to come down tougher on groups who propagate extremist narratives but who lurk just below the terrorism threshold, suggesting withdrawal of funding, bans on speaking, etc. Also potentially the idea that it might be smart to relocate some of these marches away from central London, or perhaps to make them static marches. But that ultimately is a matter for the police to decide. And of course, the police do have operational independence. So let's see how this march goes tomorrow. But lots of concerns, of course, because a huge rise in anti-Semitic attacks and incidents since October the 7th.
OK, Katherine Forster there for us in Westminster. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, you're going to find this next story absolutely fascinating, but it's also going to prove to be incredibly controversial. In fact, that's a real understatement. There's a major report now on an MI5 agent, and apparently he was embedded inside the IRA during the Troubles. This investigation has taken 7 years and has cost £40 million.
Well, joining us now is our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who's actually in the studio with us this morning. And Doogie, this is Operation Canova, isn't it?
It is.
About this.
It is. This, as you say, this operation has been ongoing through many years, and it has quite high quality and credibility in it because none other than John Boucher, who is the current Chief Constable of the PSNI, was at the head of this at the beginning. It's now gone to Sir Ian Livingstone, who is looking after things. But really what this is looking at how the state ran informers, ran double agents inside paramilitary groups, and they had them in both sides, unionist and nationalist organisations. And it's really taking an in-depth look at that and seeing, did British citizens get killed in order to protect the identity of informers? And that's really where this is going, because these operations happen all over the world, you must understand. But when it's UK soil that it's actually happening on, with UK forces in there, it becomes a whole different ballgame.
Yes, because what you're talking about here is an MI5 mole who was placed inside the IRA. We don't fully know, do we, what he did there, whether he was responsible for anyone's deaths or whether people died because he was there in order to protect his identity?
Well, I mean, the IRA at one point, the Belfast Brigade were so heavily infiltrated by intelligence that most of that went to Fermanagh and South Tyrone brigades, and they were very, very effective at how they carried out terrorist attacks. But of course, then you had the Lochgall massacre, where the SAS was standing waiting and had every escape route completely covered. That didn't happen by accident. Somebody at a very high level inside the IRA told them what was happening, and that plan was executed by the SAS and stopped. It basically brought the IRA to the table at that stage of the game. And then that starts making you wonder, in the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, we had side deals done with, and you keep on hearing me saying that about legacy, letters of comfort, Queen's pardons and mercies, etc. If Canova can get to this information, and there is lists of informers, and there is double agents, surely they can be published, and those that are looking for their day in court saying, we want to know what happened inside Northern Ireland, we want to know what happened to our loved ones, well, it now appears that MI5 probably has most of that information there, and that possibly is more down the road of why this legacy bill is coming into Northern Ireland to shut down any of these future prosecutions.
And do you think that will happen? I mean, the First Minister of Northern Ireland is Sinn Féin.
Well, they are. And Sinn Féin actually, in this, if Canova actually starts to show, as it is showing, of IRA leaks and cooperation and collusion, well, Sinn Féin will probably be the most embarrassed by this particular report, because these are IRA nutting squads, for want of a better, taking out nationalist people. Some of them might have had nothing to do with the Troubles, but it was for the protection of those that were involved inside the IRA that were passing information back to MI5. And the report will be released at 11 o'clock this morning. We'll be having a look through it today to see and we'll have to see how many redactions, etc., have been in this report. This could be politically explosive.
OK, Jiggy Beattie, really
It's going to be an enormous story, isn't it?
A huge story, and you'll have it for us across the day on GB News. Really good to see you, Jiggy Beattie. Thank you very much.
OK, 9:15, it's time for the latest Great British Giveaway. First winner was Phil from West Yorkshire, and now we have our latest winner, Charles from Stoke-on-Trent, who won 18 grand in cash. Here's the moment he found out.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
Oh, slippy neck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Slippy neck. That's a big surprise. Slippy neck fire. I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, what a lovely reaction.
It is lovely, isn't it? And now is your chance to enter our latest Great British Giveaway and win £12,345 in cash and a whole host of seasonal treats.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Lots of your views coming in on Theresa May and Meghan Markle. And you're not fans of either of them, it would be fair to say.
Very plain to see. Yeah.
Yes. Laura says, Theresa May standing down does not surprise me at all. Another rat deserting the sinking ship. She was a weak Home Secretary, even weaker Prime Minister, a disaster at both.
And on Meghan, Christine says, please keep this manipulative woman out of our country. We don't need her.
Ah, well, there you go. Well, Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent, will have the latest on that. Meghan Markle trying to revamp her image here in the UK. That's next. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Ellie.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Well, we've been a constitutional monarchy since the late 17th century, and of course part of that deal is that the monarch, or indeed the close immediate royal family, should not interfere with politics that in any way could be seen to affect individual parties. Now, perhaps one of the most classic cases in the 20th century was Edward VIII, who during his brief reign went down to Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales, met thousands of people who'd lost their jobs in the steel industry. In fact, he shook so many hands in the end he had to change and shake with his left hand, and he said something must be done to get these people jobs. It was taken as a direct assault on the Conservative government of the day. And we could go on to Edward Heath, as many saw it, using the Queen to get us to join the common market, and things the Queen said during the referendum on Scottish separation. And we could, of course, talk about King Charles, who as Prince of Wales endlessly talked about climate change and net zero. But the intervention overnight from Prince William, I think, is the most direct political piece of interference that has international and global implications that I almost think we've ever seen. Prince William is saying to Israel, stop what you're doing. Some will see that as being given a free pass to Hamas. Many young people will say, hooray, he's doing the right thing. But whether he's doing the right thing or not, has he gone just too far with this? Should our future king intervene in this way? I don't believe that he should. I think he's making a very big mistake.
Welcome back to Breakfast. You are watching and listening to us, Anne and Ellie, this morning on International Women's Day. Lots of you getting in touch on the Prime Minister, Theresa May, ex-Prime Minister Theresa May, who's standing down before the next general election. Barbara says, the thorn in Boris's side is finally going. For me, thank goodness.
Yeah, some people will not forgive, will they? Yeah. And Shelley makes an interesting point about Meghan and Harry, saying, I personally think Meghan and Harry are looking for a way back because their money is running out and their ways of earning out of the royal connection. Maybe they're coming back to sort of strengthen the royal connection.
On Theresa May, Cillin says, what a farce of her decision to stand down at the next election. She was the worst PM ever. Crafty and menacing. She knows that if she does stand, she will lose by a huge majority, and it is a safe Tory seat. So what she does is step down and hopefully hope to be given a place in the Lords, the other decadent waste of money and space institution where she can have a regular nap and get paid for it.
Oh, that's really harsh. But Alison, on the other hand, says, overblown left-wing nonsense, all that. If she'd been allowed to get on with her plans, it would have been fine, and we would have growth. 1922, though, wanted Sunak. And now look at the state of the Tory party.
Dave says, I'm a Conservative to the core. However, she will go down in history as possibly the worst Prime Minister. She is responsible for waving through of the 2008 Climate Change Act without scrutiny or due diligence. This single act will be responsible for the total destruction of the UK economy, says Dave. Yes.
Actually, I'm beginning to wonder whether Alison's point about being overblown left-wing nonsense and if she'd been allowed to get on with her plans, things would have worked, is actually more about Liz Truss than Theresa May.
Yes, I think that is more about Liz Truss, actually.
So do I.
Who, in the Times Online today, saying that she might be set for a comeback. So do let us know what you make of that.
I think the press just do that, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
You know, they're saying, could Windsor and Maidenhead be a great constituency for Boris to make a comeback? But, you know, really, is that going to happen?
But like you were saying earlier, very interesting to see how this will go with Tory HQ, because we're seeing a list of high-profile MPs, aren't we?
You just think,
down?
oh, no, what
Ben
do we
Wallace,
do now?
Kwasi Kwarteng, Sajid Javid, Dominic Raab.
Major names and people with real experience.
The party's going to look very, very different, isn't it, come the next general election. But thank you for your company today on this International Women's Day. It's been great to be with you.
Yeah, it's been good, actually.
You're back tomorrow.
Together on
it has been lovely to be together.
I'm back tomorrow with Martin.
Yeah, and then we're back together on Sunday. What a treat. Next up is Britain's Newsroom.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Dry weather for many of us through the rest of the day, but there'll still be cloudier and cooler conditions across the northeast coast. There's an easterly breeze still dragging on, quite a lot of cloud and some drizzly rain. That will fall as snow over the high ground of northeastern Scotland. Further south, though, it'll be a fairly dry day. Across the south and east, there'll be more in the way of sunshine throughout today. We've got drier air coming off the near continent, so that's bringing that brighter weather for those areas. Across many parts of Western England and Wales and Scotland, there'll be plenty of sunshine and through this afternoon. It's going to be a breezier day, though, than recent days, but it'll still feel fairly pleasant in the sunshine. Tonight, we start to see the cloud thicken from the south and west as some drizzly rain starts to arrive across parts of Devon and Cornwall and further east across the south coast by the early hours. So there'll be quite a lot more cloud around by the start of the day on Saturday. Further north, though, it will stay fairly dry and clear, particularly across the northwest. So there is a risk of a touch of frost to start the weekend, but that keen easterly breeze will continue for many northern areas throughout the weekend. As a result, it will stay cloudier across